G'day, guys. At long last, we got going. Anyway, I had some laundry duty, trying to shove food down my throat as well, and a whole lot of other things. Get my evening coffee, or milky coffee to be more precise, ready to go. And so, yeah, it's been a mad rush. Let's put it that way. So I've also got, Jonathan on the line, so I'll bring him in right now. G'day, Jonathan.
Hello, guys. How's it going? You all right?
Good to have you here, mate.
Oh, thank you. You too.
So, you've got an icon as well. nice, mate.
That was from yesterday. Yeah.
Was that from yesterday? Okay, you were at competition.
Is that like a?
Is this
like
competition or is this?
It's like an exhibition.
Yep.
So they had a competition there, but it's basically just meet and greet people and stuff,
Oh, great. Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Anyway, I invited Jonathan because he eventually pulled the pin and got his channel up and running. Started putting a bit of content out there. He is in my featured channels, right? If you go right down there and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Get it out of the way. We need to support people like Jonathan and other people in the carnivore community that are basically putting forward an ancestral approach to bodybuilding, an ancestral approach to living. We need to support these people because otherwise we've got a whole lot of crackpots and honey and rice eating buffoons out there that all they do is manage to get basically skinny. They basically get muscular fat rather than actually lean out like the old bodybuilders used to do, where they've got a really good composition all year round and quite muscular. Now, how well they maintain that depends on how much they train through the year as well. Back in those days, a lot of them used to let go a bit. I think Arnold was one of those people that just did the one thing he said he did all year round, and that was basically exercise his calves. That's the only thing he bloody did. I naturally have good big calves. I showed a picture to Lilith once. I think it was, yeah. And she said, oh, because we were just doing a Zoom thing, and she goes, bloody hell, she was actually quite shocked. And I go, yeah, my father's got big, massive calves. I've never exercised calves. I just don't have to. It's just one of those things. It's just a gift. I think it's my Neanderthal DNA part of that. That's where it really comes from. They used to be basically, they had bigger calves. They were stockier and wider. Their body was just built like that. They had to go close in when they were taking down big animals. It's just the way they hunted at a different style than us. We were midday persistent hunters from parts of Africa, and so we were leaner, and that's why people that have still got that sort of style of African style, it's much harder to put a lot of muscularity on. Unless you're basically North American, where you've got a bit of mixed blood and you've actually got some of those European genes, and you may be lucky to be able to really build up muscle. But a lot of you don't see a lot from the African continent in terms of competition in that sort of arena for those reasons. It's just genetics. Can't do much about it. So I'm sort of lucky that I just have to eat. I don't even have to bother about doing much training in my case. I just build muscle just automatically. It's just because of those genetics. But and that's the other thing, that doesn't mean you can't. I mean, Jonathan knows you can still build muscle, quite muscularity, if in the right way, in a healthy way. But some people have to be realistic as well in that space. But it's good to have a lot of muscularity, because long term, having good muscle skeletal structure will mean that you will be able to get out of a seat when you become old. You'll be able to move around and be far more mobile than many of your peers, and you'll enjoy much healthier and a prolonged health span, and that's damn important. And I think, like Bart and Jonathan, we prioritize sort of high intensity and building up muscle, because that's really important if you want to have strong bones and strong muscles going into old age. Anyway, I'll let you go, say a few things.
Yeah, we've seen people with like stronger grip strengths in older ages. You know, they better longevity, less risk of bone breakages, things like that. And yeah, like the Neanderthal thing, like yeah, my brother, my dad, and myself are very like calf dominant sort of thing. We've got bigger calves than like a lot of pro bodybuilders. So it's a bit, we're not sort of pro bodybuilders, but my dad doesn't even train. His legs are like someone to the legs training seriously. Yeah, I mean high intensity works pretty well. It's good. It's just that it does work to a point where I think I mentioned in the video with Bart, like you have a bottleneck in your training and your recovery. So you can train really hard for a period of time, and you sort of have a point, generally most people do, where they can no longer sort of sustain that, so they might have to take a little break off from the gym, or just reducing the sort of training like volume. Say you're doing 10 sets in one day, you might do, I don't know, you might do 6 sets, but just make sure those 6 sets are the same sort of intensity that you perform your 10 usually. So there's so much nuance to it. It's very hard to sort of have. It's very hard to sort of give people a training program and routines. And I'm recommending to people, generally speaking, depends where you're at, your age, your sort of recovery abilities, maybe 3 to 4, maybe 5 in some cases, weight training sessions a week. You can build cardiovascular fitness with weight training as well. So just sort of, you have to find your own way, sort of thing. And a lot of people, like my girlfriend, for example, she trains 5 times a week. Sophie, I think she's in the chat. She does a half-hour, 40-minute sessions. If she wasn't doing that, because she's got 2 children, it's hard for childcare sort of thing. So she'd be doing maybe 3 sessions of an hour. So it just depends how you can split it up.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, I think it's important for people to. Movement is important. I think it's together with the right sort of species appropriate eating. I think movement is really important. None of us are going to basically go and go to an adult competition to compete. It's going to be a small niche of people that are committed to doing a lot of work to get there. But a lot of us can still develop really strong musculoskeletal structures. And it's things that I know you specialize a lot into that sort of area. And a lot of people out there can't really find coaches or people that are basically coming from an ancestral approach and also combining, proper movement with proper dietary approaches. And that's why sort of I've been saying to my supporters in recent times, that's why I brought you on again to promote your channel and get people to follow you. And if people want to basically build strong muscularity going forward, to consult with you, get in touch with you and stuff like that. They may have parents or other people that want some information in those regards. And so it's an opportunity for you to answer some questions, some of the subscribers here, and hopefully get some of them to subscribe. Because did I say that again? Will people basically click on the subscribe button, please? Let's get, because Jonathan isn't going to grow and be able to contribute to our community if we don't support him. He needs our support so he can actually provide his support and his time. You've got to make it worth his while. He's a busy man like I am. I've got my day job and many other things. He's got a consultancy business, and he does a lot of things in gyms and stuff like that. So for him to dedicate additional time, he needs support from this community. So we need to promote him. We need to get the information out there and let other people know that Jonathan's around, that he's basically a carnivore, has an ancestral approach to eating, plus combines sensible techniques and knowledge when it comes to developing good body composition, improving musculoskeletal performance, and and also dealing with issues that some elderly people has, because I do know that Jonathan does deal with some people that are in the older age bracket. And it's important that, you may have a parent. I mean, it may not be you. You may be fine. You may be young. But you may have a parent that has really he's struggling, a mother or a father. And you could always try to hook them up with Jonathan and try and actually learn a bit of how to improve their musculoskeletal health. Because if you want your parents to live longer, you want your parents to be in a better state. Both diet and movement are very important in life. You can't neglect. You can't be sedentary. You can have a perfect diet, but if you're sedentary and you're not moving your muscles, really they're going to atrophy. It's like being in a bed in a hospital for long periods of time. You will sustain atrophy. It's not a good thing, guys. We were midday persistent hunters. We got up, we got that bolst of cortisol, and then some free fatty acids and some glucose into our system to get us going in the mornings, so we can go out there and walk around and hunt for animals, and run in quickly, use force to bring them down, and then eventually carry them back. And that requires it's walking and then high intensity movements to achieve the kill, and then basically carrying a lot of weight bearing sort of activities to get stuff back. That is the normal way our bodies were designed to be done. These things were done on a daily basis by even older people. Remember what Mary Ruddock said? She struggled to keep up with an 80-year-old Maasai running up a hillside. That just shows that. And she's a person that corrected a lot of her health problems coming out of a vegetarian diet and all that, and still, with the damage that she sustained all those years, corrected part of it, but still is struggling. Because I always remind people, we don't look at the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit is really energy production. Energy production, if you've been on very high deuterium diets for a very long time, or your mother was when you were being born, she would have transferred through the placenta and through the umbilical cord quite a lot of deuterium. That deuterium, that high deuterium level, will do far more damage, mitochondrial damage. So when you're born, that's why every generation seems to have far more fibromyalgia, energy issues, and all sorts of things at a much younger age. This is not accidental. It's the high deuterium loads in our diet and our lifestyles. And so we need to make some radical changes in our lives and encourage others in our families and friends to do likewise, because we want to have long health spans and not be unable to get out of a chair and being wheeled around in a wheelchair by a robot, because there won't be, with the birth rates the way they're going, there won't be enough humans to do that. So that's the future if we continue down this road. Pottinger showed it with his cats. So there was a question here earlier. Somebody was asking. Let me just go back.
I think NTO asked one.
There was that one.
Nick.
About the
I responded to him personally, but the Arnold Expo is basically, for those that don't know, it basically happens in different continents every year. So it'll be one in Columbus, Ohio, one in South America, that sort of thing. And it's the idea is Arnold comes to meet you and you say hello to him, sort of thing, but he wasn't there this year again. You sort of meet and greet different bodybuilding, fitness, influencer sort of people. What's strange how the sort of industry's changed in that regard is that there's more popularity towards the fighting, MMA, style sports, the CrossFit, the general fitness sort of space than the bodybuilding, which for me, it's a bit like, I'm a bodybuilder sort of thing. I want that to grow, but then you've got to also think, people taking a conscious decision to actually get involved in something that's, relatively healthy. They're thinking more about the food they're eating, their exercise, well-being. So, yeah, I'm quite in support of it all, really. Yeah, so that was a good event. Actually, I met lots of people. So.
Yeah, well, it's good that some people in that space are starting to realise, especially with the recent deaths and all that have been happening in that space. I think people are starting to get a reality check and saying, is it worth going to these extremes or doing certain very contraindicated things? So I think that
Yeah.
that space is starting to shift very slowly, but it is starting to shift, which hopefully will move away from some and go back to some of the traditional approaches, which were way healthier. Because a lot of those, some of those old bodybuilders were living into their 80s and 90s.
It seems to be going that way. There's now, so bodybuilding until a few years ago was just bodybuilding. Then you had the women's categories. Then they sort of added in like a 212 category, so that's for like the shorter individuals. They had a men's physique category, so that's you basically wear like swimming trunks, basically. That's lighter muscled, so it's a bit more healthier. You don't have to push the limit as much in terms of like performance enhancing drugs. The step up from that is the men's classic physique division. That seems to be sort of in line with Arnold's era sort of thing, like in terms of what they're doing, and they're enhanced, but they look a bit more natural compared to like say the giant bodybuilders. So yeah, it seems to be going in the right sort of direction. There's definitely, and that's part of what made me sort of come to my ideas about the channel, like my channel. So having something like a more health focused sort of approach. So my mantra is basically aligning physique goals with positive health outcomes. So I want to try and bridge that gap so people can think, well, you just saw my pictures earlier from the Arnolds. Like, I'm not much smaller than these people, and these people are using 2-3 grams of gear, growth hormone, insulin, everything under the sun. I've gained like 10 kilograms of muscle in the last 18 months. And that's, I've used gear like about twice in that time. So maybe about 3 times that time. I've not done it constantly. I'm off it currently, but it just goes to show, if you sort of let your body heal itself, your digestion sort of work a bit better. Like, these guys are, when you see them, they're very bloated.
Exactly.
They
that
admit
muscular
that.
fat sort of thing.
It's like intramuscular visceral fat. They've got, it's all inflated. There's not often a lot of lines or definition. It's just because they've had to consume so much food and so much inflammation, and it's just, the fact is they're eating like 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 calories a day, and it's a lot of sugar, a lot of water, or deuterium. So they're very inflamed. That's for certain.
Yeah, it's not a good way to live, and you can build a lot of muscularity and a lot of strength, and people need to realize that with a species appropriate diet. If you take a look at some of the, like, I remember this is in Greece, I lift with another friend of mine a shield, an ancient Greek shield, and we both struggled to lift it. That was how heavy the damn thing was. I mean, we were teenagers, but still, it just shows you how strong these people were. And all they were doing is eating a whole lot of meat, because that's what that in 15 data of the ancient Greeks sort of warrior class showed in those cities. It was really high. So they were eating animal foods and dairy foods and stuff like that. So they didn't have anything else. And the difference was that the way they were exercising, it was a very high leucine diet, pretty much. And what they were achieving was, they were achieving with the exercise that are combining with these foods, they were building really strong muscle fibers, compact, strong muscle fibers. When you consume a lot of water, what you're actually doing is, in a lot of the deuterium, you may bulge things because of water retention, but you're actually damaging your energy production capabilities, and you're also damaging those muscle fibers. So they're going for the bulky look rather than the strength, which is, you look at even ancient Greek type statues and stuff like that. They were very muscular, but their muscles weren't as big as these bodybuilders, but they had greater strength. That means their actual muscle fibers were trained in such a way, and they consumed such foods that gave them really strong strength. I mean, I remember my father used to have massive muscles, along there. He used to lift the three of us kids. He's a Boilermaker welder. Never worked in a gym, whatever, but it was really lifting large pipes and stuff like that in his work. And he was just built like a brick shithouse. Basically, it was you couldn't push him over, you couldn't anything. It was just like hitting a wall, practically running into him or anything. So, but so you can build that. And Dad loved a lot of meat when he was young. He used to consume quite a lot of meat. It's just in his later years, he was convinced by others, you're eating too much meat, George, you won't live long, and all this sort of stuff. And he didn't think about this sort of stuff and goes, oh, maybe I am eating too much meat and all that. And he cut back. He started cutting back on meat and ended up in his mid-70s with sarcopenia, or with a lot of muscle wastage and stuff like that. I said, Dad, what are you doing? And that's when I put him on taurine, leucine, and eating more meat. And his muscles just within just a couple of years went 50% up again from what they were, and they're even bigger now. So the funny thing is his muscles are looking slightly bigger than mine, and he's 87.
I have a similar anecdote. Yeah, my stepdad, I don't think he'd care if I told people, but he's about 67, something like that. He's quite a small chap, about 5'6", but he's like strong, like dense.
That's how Dad is.
Yeah, but his diet is essentially OMAD or TOMAD sort of thing. He's not carnivore or anything like that, but it is a very meat heavy diet. He will eat like a half kilo pack of mince.
Well, Dad's not a carnivore either. He eats some vegetables and stuff like that. He loves his.
He hates vegetables. My stepdad.
Well, Dad actually grows his own, like some tomatoes. He'll grow some cucumbers. He loves cucumbers. Like even in winter, he's always got gherkins at home. Always, just goes through but he'll have on his plate a whole bunch of meat, a couple of gherkins, 2 or 3 gherkins, and some feta cheese. His favorite is a goat feta cheese, and I understand why. I mean, they herd goats up in Dad's village, and he grew up consuming goat milk and goat cheese and prefers that. He just likes the texture of it because he grew up with it. So he still buys that. He goes to Fresh Cuts, which is an outlet, a business up here in North Hobart, and they specialise in a lot of Greek cheese products and other things like that. So Dad goes and buys his hard cheeses and a lot of his feta cheese from them. So it's because it's really hard to find. It's like traditional quality type goat cheese. A lot of them that are made, I don't know. I've tried a couple and I go, not really for me. Where the Greek ones I love, so myself, it's a slightly different taste, and also they're not as watery, so it's slightly different the way they make them. So I do enjoy them far more myself.
Yeah, I think your palate does change in this sort of diet as well. Like,
that's true.
Like for example, like if you put 2 glasses of milk in front of me, one's raw, one's pasteurized, I can smell and taste the difference between them, but the average person might not be able to because there's, they've got so much mucus, they're so inflamed, and they can't. Your taste definitely sort of picks up. Like if I have like this is just some sugar-free. It's like sugar-free squash basically. That tastes to me really sweet. Like I've had to water it down a lot. So it's funny. Exactly. You do pick up on these things.
Look, glutathione, in a sense, in terms of the body, the way it actually doesn't affect it. Well, the body doesn't really affect glutathione. Your glutathione status really depends on 2 key factors: what your hormones are doing and what your nutrients that are coming in, on the one hand, and on the other hand, so you can't sort of increase it beyond physiological limits, so to speak. So trying to take supplements to go, I'm going to push it higher and higher and higher, it sort of doesn't work like that. But you can actually suppress it. So if you're in a high insulin, high sugar type sort of eating regime, you will lower glutathione. You will suppress it. So intracellular antioxidants go up when your insulin and glucose are much lower. So that's, because AMPK has something to do with it. And so in a more low carbohydrate state, AMPK is upregulated. So that's sort of the reason. Why? Don't ask me. It's just our genetics are basically set like that, ancestrally in that way. And I suspect back then people didn't consume much, only seasonal, if that, in the interglacial periods. Most of the time, pre-agriculture, it was animal foods, and that was it. For most of the time, anything that walked on the land. You had, in the glacial periods, which was the longest periods, you had frost right down to the tropics. If you take a look at the old archaeological evidence, even of the Ethiopian plateau, where a lot of early humans sort of evolved, and sort of from there they moved into Europe later on. Those sort of areas are quite temperate. They're not tropical. They may be in the tropical zone, but they're temperate because of the elevation. And in earlier periods, in glacial periods, they were quite cold. So, and you had big animals roaming around with a lot of fat on them for thermal insulation. So there's a lot of nonsense out there that people peddle. Yes, interglacial periods, yes, the tropical areas are very different in that regard. But in glacial periods, which our species has lived the majority of time, there wasn't much plants around, let's put it that way. And the only stuff that the actual animals got was actually eating between sort of their facial movements to push the snow away in order to get to grasses. And we don't eat grasses because we don't have cecums. So that's not our style. So it's a very different thing. And I suspect that once you affected those hormonal systems that glutathione sort of evolved to function in, and you went outside those parameters, it doesn't work. So it's not, whether it's, we haven't proven whether directly insulin or directly, these things have a direct, like a sort of a direct effect. I think it's just an indirect effect by suppressing AMPK by rising insulin. You're basically down-regulating that system. So that's really, it's an indirect way in a sense. It's not sort of, but at the same time, the only way of actually affecting it is really not eating carbs. Now, beyond a certain physiological limit, you can't produce any more. But whether you get to the physiological limit, that depends on nutrients. So a number of nutrients, obviously a number of amino acids are very important for glutathione. But one of the key nutrients that is required is selenium. And plants beyond things like, Brazil nuts nowadays. In the past, there were no domesticated Brazil nuts. If you ate a Brazil nut, its ancestor, you would die because it was so poisonous. So modern nuts, like Brazil nuts, are a product of agriculture, and many other things are a result of agriculture and domestication. So back then, the only access to selenium came from animal foods. If you weren't eating them, you weren't getting enough, and you wouldn't have good glutathione status. So that's pretty much it about the glutathione thing that I can think of. Yes, I'll spank myself later, fluffy rainbows, and I'll do my dusters. I'll put my frilly dress on as well. Yes. Anyway, I find milk hydrates me more than tap water. Addicted to it. Laugh out loud. Is this a good strategy to shift in a fat hydration, even it is pasteurized? Well, when you pasteurize milk, you're not getting the lactoferrin. You're losing the enzyme. So if you don't have and if you only have one of the allele of the lactopersistence, you may have a bit of struggle with some people don't. Some people, even with the one allele, it seems to be upregulated sufficiently to basically allow them to break down, galactose, part of the lactose, and convert it into glucose. So they seem to be able to do fine with that. And then there are some things like you miss out on vitamin C. You get less lactoferrin and a few other nutrients. What you're getting is you're getting more macros in a sense. So you're losing out on the micros, you're getting more macros. Minerals, that doesn't get affected at all. And yeah, so you still get good levels of potassium and stuff like that out of it. But technically speaking, it's the fats that are the hydrating factor, being used, low deuterium compared to water. And fat does hydrate where sugar dehydrates. It's just the way it works at the mitochondrial level. Even though when you take a carb and put it through a bomb, whether it's a bomb calorimeter or some device to extract the fluids, a fruit, most carbohydrates, in particular fruits, will have far more water content. It's high deuterium water, but they'll have far more water content. But the body doesn't use that to hydrate, because what it does is it tries to eliminate it. It pulls it out in the Krebs cycle, so it removes it to force it out. The only time the Krebs cycle will take it up from the cytosol inside the cell, that is when it's in reverse Krebs cycle state. And that's not very healthy when you're in that sort of state, because you're not producing energy via oxidative phosphorylation, but you're in a growth phase producing shitloads of lactate, and you're in a more fermentation state. That's the only time it's a benefit. You could say, well, a short-term benefit. Long-term, it's not going to be very good for you. It's just going to exacerbate the damage to your mitochondria, to your electron chains, or to the ATPase will be damaged. Complex 5, which means you'll have less energy in the more healthier way. It's really that. And there's a few other things. I mean, there's niacin in it, and part of the niacin complex is nicotinamide, which has an ability to retain moisture in the sort of the muscular tissue. Some people are aware of it, some people are not. I sort of recommend basic B2 vitamins until people can sort out their own hydration issues in terms of fatty acid oxidation and stuff like that. People are in the early days, they still haven't fully fat adapted, or they're still having issues. They've got mitochondrial issues, they're still healing, but they're getting skin issues like dry skin and all that. And I say, well, consider taking a cheap old nicotinamide type vitamin B3. They're quite cheap, only a couple of dollars for 30, 60 tablets. So they're not very expensive, and they inhibit moisture loss from the skin. So depending on, if you want to retain a bit more. So that's a sort of way to go, sort of a species appropriate way to go in my book. I always say to people, try and fix the underlying problem. It's not a good idea just to supplement forever, because it's just like the allopathic sort of physicians that just give you a medicine to mask a problem. They're not fixing the problem. It's fine. I've sort of moved away, Jonathan, from promoting any multivitamins or stuff like that. I say, well, if you've got you've come out of a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet, you're quite depleted, you've got a lot of underlying micronutrient deficiencies, I'd put you on massive organ meats. Obviously, if you've got a lot of nutrient density, you're really healthy, you only need a bit of organ meats here or there now and then, and that's fine. You know, if that's what you want. Even muscle meats are fine if you're replete in terms of micronutrient status. But if you're not, and you're in those early days, a quick way of actually, and a much better way, because you're getting a food matrix, and you're getting a whole lot of other peptides and a whole lot of other components which work synergistically together in terms of healing and increasing the nutrient density in the body, because all these enzymes, they require a whole lot of range, a vast range of cofactors and elements to work properly. So single sort of vitamins I don't really subscribe to that sort of idea. And then when it comes to even this sort of thing, buying a cheap B3 vitamin, I don't have a problem with that, because usually it doesn't stay in the system for too long. It doesn't bioaccumulate. It clears out within 3 days. And if it gives you a bit of relief from your dry skin until you sort out your health issues, that's fine. That's the way I see it anyway.
Yeah, you touched on a really good point there about the cofactors. A lot of people, the best way, they're called supplements for a reason. They're meant to supplement a diet. They're not called essential supplements.
Yeah, that's it.
You get essential nutrients from the food you're eating, and I think people get the wrong stick. Like the amount of times I meet people in the bodybuilding communities, they'll post on Instagram their pictures of their pill boxes. Oh, this is my multivitamin to cover my bases. I'm like, all right, we were eating, I don't know, 2 kilos of rice and potatoes a day, a kilo of meat a day, and 2 protein shakes, and I don't know, a scoop of vitamin C in your post-workout. And like, something's obviously off here.
Exactly.
It's not working.
Yeah.
So
maybe it's all those carbs that are binding a lot of the minerals and stuff like that.
Everything. Yeah, we know. I think I know you've touched on it before, but basically there's studies on what they've had, is it oysters or something with tortilla wrap or something, and then they sort of said
corn tortillas.
Yeah, so they found the tortillas actually inhibited the absorption of like the zinc and minerals and different things, and
basically
you think you're getting, you know, a carb source which say, I don't know, whatever, vitamin C, potassium, whatever, then you're having a meat with it, and that's combining to the two. But really, you might be actually getting less. People don't realize that. So you're trying to put a lot of different things into one system, and they kind of work against each other. And that just speaks exactly to what you said about minerals, the balance, and eating an ancestrally appropriate diet. So yeah,
it's a bit like the RDIs for potassium. They keep on going up because people are eating such refined crap, and all. They need to eat more and because of a lot of the anti-nutrients, because they do tests on these people, the average people, and they see, well, your status is much lower, and you're consuming this amount, and they go, well, that calculates to that. Oh, well, there must be some malabsorption, so we need to up the levels. That's what they do. People need to realize the RDIs are based on the average of a sick population. They're not for the healthy population. This is for the average of a current sick population. Is what they're committees that get together and say what's not going to do harm and what do they need, the average person in our society. They don't care what they eat or whatever, but what the average person needs, and they up those things. If you're on a carnivore diet and try to get to those levels, you're going to get into toxic levels of potassium, because humans excrete every day 192 milligrams. And when you eat meat, you're consuming up to 2.5. Sometimes if you're eating a lot of meat, you could get close to 3,500, sometimes even higher, very close to the RDI if you're really packing in the pounds, bodybuilders and stuff like that. So yeah, under those circumstances, you probably need a bit more sodium as well in that sort of mix. So the reality is that people need to be really aware of their excretion rates. Our excretion rates are much lower, like even magnesium. It's about 120, 20 from the feces, 100 from the urine. I've done a video on both those, very old videos, but they cover those points, and it's actual science. This has actually been measured. So they know exactly what the excretion rates are of these things.
It's funny. Yeah, I mean, so when I was working in a vegan health food shop, do you know what the most popular supplements were? Have a guess.
Have a guess of what they were. Magnesium would have been one of the top,
Hmm.
and potassium may have been the other one.
No,
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 not.
nearly,
No.
but no, it was so in this country at least, turmeric, curcumin extracts,
Oh, yeah.
Magnesium was definitely at the top.
Yeah, the magnesium, everybody, paleo, keto, anyone out there, they're all, magnesium is right. Everybody drives me crazy about magnesium. I say, you realize you're only excreting 120
Mm.
and you're getting far more from your meat heavy diet. Why are you worried?
They seem, that's the thing of like the diet we sort of follow. We're not needing a load of these extra little things, you know. I mean, sometimes I've had restless legs and I've used some topical magnesium spray. Yeah, it seems to sort of help. It helps me sleep. Some people, my stepdad, he has it's like an intolerance or basically one of the artificial sweeteners or flavors or something. It seems to
Okay.
mess up his electrolyte balance. So sometimes I'll give him like a magnesium tablet and it sort of helps it out quite a lot.
Yeah, look, some of them actually spike insulin more than actual sugar, table sugar, or like a potato. If you have a potato, you'll spike insulin far less. And some of these sugar alcohols can actually spike insulin even higher. And so it
There's
can
graph
cause a bit
on
of,
it.
it can really cause a bit of a derangement to electrolytes and stuff like that. So that's a possibility that what's possibly happening without knowing exactly which one he's actually taking. He's taking
Yeah.
sort of the popular one, which is the aspartame one that most people get nowadays, which is probably contraindicated even for the gut microbiome. But that's the one that actually spikes the highest out of all of them. So yeah,
Could be that.
yeah, it's one that it's cheap. That's why a lot of companies use it, because it's cheap. You know, they make using stevia or erythritol or all that is a bit more expensive. So it's only the more high end market areas that will use that. So the sort of stock standard soft drinks, stock standard sugar alcohols in different type of processed foods out there are pretty much aspartame. You know, mostly. Doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me. It's just cheap. It's all
Would
down to
explain all the
cost.
nuance we hear about I take this up and it helps and I take this one. It's like you're putting so many things in your diet, you could be throwing so many things off. Like I sort of say people that are especially very ill, people that, you know, have got so much wrong with them, they get overwhelmed by it. Just take everything out, just slowly sort of take everything out, strip down to the bare basics.
I find even with sad dieters or people on a standard diet or mixed diet or different, I'm not even talking about keto or carnivore or anything like that. I put them on 2 or 3 grams of taurine, and it really just fixes all those muscle cramps and everything else.
Yeah, I was saying to a girl yesterday, she's started up a YouTube channel recently. I think it's called Steak Fueled or something. It's the same sort of idea as me based, but hers is very much, it seems performance based maybe. But yeah, I sent to her, like, she's asking about people saying about electrolyte balance and adding fruit. She tried the fruit thing before. She's like, well, it didn't work. It just felt crap. And I was like,
exactly.
It's taurine. Like, she noticed she eats more rarer meat now, so she's getting more taurine from diet, and she feels a lot better. She's like, I can eat she's a little 4'11" woman, but she's eating 250 protein a day and I can't remember, like 200 fat or so, something like that, and she feels a lot better for it. And like that's why I told her, I sort of referred her to your sort of information, said, yeah, that's why.
Yeah, it's being a master regulator and osmolyte, it really regulates, because the key thing is, the nice thing about it regulates ion transfer and ion sort of homeostasis at the kidney level. So it's sensing what sort of ions are coming through, and as you're filtering through the nephrons, you're filtering all the actual fluids, the blood fluids. it will actually, without, because some of these pathways that need to be regulated, because they're all packed. It's one of the most densely packed TAUT, T-A-U-T, which is taurine transporters, in the actual it's one of those tissue types that is very heavy with taurine transporters. It's not accidental, guys. It's there to regulate because it's a master osmolyte within the body, and it will regulate. And so if you've got too much magnesium, it'll dump it out. Too little, it'll actually recycle it back in the system. You'll excrete less. Your standard excretion without taurine is 120 milligrams. But if you take taurine and let's say you only consume 100 milligrams, you'll only dump 100. You won't, 80 and 20, and you won't dump the other 20. You'll recycle it back in to achieve homeostasis. That's what a species-appropriate diet does, because it provides the sort of key critical nutrients that regulate the body better. And as long as you're regulating the body better, you don't have these problems. You don't, a lot of people, I've found that once they get their taurine status sorted, whether they have their meats a bit more rare or they throw in a few grams, it seems to sort out a lot of their anxiety, their issues with their hydration, their issues with their general electrolyte status seems to all just go away, less ache and pain, stuff like that. Now, if you're a bodybuilder and you're doing somebody that's involved in a lot of high intensity activity and stuff like that, and you're going to have a bit more water loss, you're going to excrete a bit more water as a consequence. You will lose something, but obviously because you're eating a lot, you're getting enough, you should be okay as long as you've maintained a good status of taurine. And if you're actually having a carnivore diet in particular, keto is a bit more problematic because not enough meat in it. But if you're on a carnivorous diet, most people won't have a problem. They won't even have to supplement. Our biggest problem is the way meat is actually slaughtered and hung up for quite some time, so it loses a certain level of taurine when it's hung up. And the other issue is, oxalate dumping, exposure to mold, exposure to other environmental toxins and things like that. That can have a depleting effect on sulfur amino acids. That's when we may need to supplement a bit, because we don't live in an ancestral environment like people like the Hudsons or other people like that. We live in a modern environment where we're far more exposed to xenoestrogens and all sorts of things. And so our requirements for certain nutrients like choline, like taurine and things like that do go up a bit in order to deal with a lot of that sort of stuff. It's just the reality of modern living. Welcome to the modern world, basically. So it's not exactly the same. And then on top of that, a lot of us have got accumulated damage. Let's put it that way. A lot of accumulated damage. That is why we're here, most of us, because if we had like the Maasai or that, a long, steady, healthy lifespan, we've got this, a declining lifespan with chronic illness. And then eventually we wake up to the realization we've done a lot of damage, and then we're looking for solutions. Some people have come across the right solutions, some people don't, and make things worse. And others realize that and say, okay, I need to basically reduce my deuterium levels. I need to put in things, nutrients in my sort of my lifestyle, to reverse a lot of the damage that I've caused. That can take up to a decade or whatever. So obviously I will be making a video this week sometime, and that will cover, it'll be a short video, and it'll just cover on deuterium sort of depleted water sources. Lama has actually that's very nice of him. He's gone out of his way. There's another person, I'm trying to remember his name now, and Lama, but Lama did a lot of work. He actually hunted down a lot of different companies that sell deuterium depleted water. And I think now I've got enough information to be able to put a number of these things up, so people have got a lot of different sources and different price points. And I've actually found for them. I get the Evian water, which cost me a bit over $4. For the same quantity, I can actually get a deuterium depleted water, which is less than 146 parts per million for my coffee, down to 136. So I'm going to shift to this water now. So I'll be promoting that water rather than the supermarket Alpine water, since it's lower in deuterium by 10 parts per million. And it's getting closer to the magical 130, which is the safe limit and below. So, I think if I do that, I won't mind having 3 or 4 coffees a day. I'll go back to my old habits. That's probably the only bad thing, because I'm only doing about 1 or 2 now, because I want to minimize the amount of deuterium. Even at 146, I think it's too high. It's just 4 parts per million below that of tap water. So I'm, cognizant of that. But with this, yes, I may feel more justified. Anyway, doing my little caffeine addiction, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, there's worse things to be addicted to. That's what I think.
That's true. Nika, good to have you here. Cecile. Anyone is beyond. I envy your raw milk. My neighbour used to be a dairy farmer, so I had access to cheap raw milk. Sadly, no more. Oh well. Yeah, it's a bugger. I don't know why this Australian company hasn't. I don't know. I mean, they've got the device. They've got patent on the device. Why don't they actually? I've got no idea why they don't expand and start selling raw milk, or like safe raw milk as they call it. In a sense, they promote it like that around the region at least, and then maybe into Europe and other places. I mean, they've got the device. Doesn't matter where they get the milk, where they source it. They just ram it into the device, put it under high pressure, which is the 6 times the atmospheric pressure of the deepest point in the Pacific Ocean, and they break the bacterial membranes. As a consequence, they eliminate the potential problem, but obviously some beneficial bacteria also go, which isn't a good thing. But anyway, it's you get a lot of the other nutrients, because even in pasteurized you get nothing, not even beneficial bacteria in that, or pathogenic. So, and it's the biggest problem is with milk. It's not so much when you had a farmer that produced raw milk and it was next door or close into a village and provided it. There were quality control localized. When it's being moved around all over the place, there's always problems or risks of contamination, which is, a bit of a problem. And that's the reason why pasteurization came in. But it really took a lot of the benefits away from the milk that raw milk has. Yeah, look, it is unfortunate for you, mate. Yeah, it'd be actually, you know what? I'm going to actually write them a letter. I'm actually going to write them a letter, Bjorn. And I'm going to say, look, I've got a channel. I've got a lot of supporters that live overseas in Europe and other things like that. Why aren't you guys looking beyond Australia, to sort of promote this milk? So maybe or even maybe providing the technology to a European company, licensing it out, something like that. I would love this company to basically grow this sort of milk product around the world, because then you'd be able to get rid of traditional pasteurization altogether. And this sort of method, because it's a smaller device, it's even a small boutique type milk producer could actually use one of that and justify it. And you could potentially get all sorts of localized products coming into the market. So I think it's, actually, Bjorn, I'm going to send them a letter. You've motivated me enough to do that. I think it's we need to encourage producers like that to get the stuff out into the international market one way or another, because it's, and even in Australia, it's limited. It's in the big capital cities, in a couple of the supermarkets. Even my sister has to go around trying to hunt it down, and a couple of the specialty stores. So it's always a bit of a hassle trying to find which store has it and which doesn't. So it's, they really need to get their sort of act together and sort of try and maybe even move away from the production of milk to producing these machines and selling these machines around the world. And, so that may be a way for them growing even more rapidly by selling high-tech kit to the world, or to the farmers of the world, or the dairy farmers of the world, to be more precise. Because we need, as people, to promote, good quality. Thanks, Sophie. And you got Sophie's a subscriber now. Good.
Yeah.
KL and Tom, good to have you here, mate.
Yeah, you're right. Just you have to support. It's a small community, and that's part of the issue why a lot of the information people like you Bart have, that just isn't put out enough yet. So, like subscribing to things, purchasing the products from the farmers, sort of, like sending a letter to these people, like about the devices. Like it all sort of helps. You have to almost like will it into reality.
Yeah, exactly. KL 55. I'm in the, what am I in? Trying to remember now. 80 odd, aren't I? God, haven't looked at my 23andMe for so long. Don't even remember my numbers. I must have had a vegetable and suffering from brain fog. Oh, God, kept on jumping back for another page and anyway, it's working now. Signing in. About time.
Are you looking for the questions?
No, I'm actually looking at what my Neanderthal levels are. So,
oh yeah,
he's actually talking. Yeah, he's got 55, and he got probably one of the genes of the large calves and stuff like that. So he got lucky in that regard. But
I'll check mine out as well. I think mine was something like 20 or something. I don't know.
Yours just 20, is it? That's pretty low for
Something like that,
a North European. You'd think you guys would have. That's you've.
It started at 30 or 40%, but as the year goes, or 2 years has gone on, it's like they update all the results all the time. So what your genes say, it seems to alter. It's weird.
Well, as they do recomputations on them, they find that people will have that they'll make adjustments and stuff like that. They are getting better. They have cleared up a lot of the early stuff now. A lot of the ancestral stuff they used to do like country based, which is just ridiculous. What are the people that are on the thing that claim to be from? Yeah, mine's 81%. I couldn't remember whether it was 83 or 81, but it's 81%. Let me share. So mine's greater than 2%. It's between 2 and 4% for the majority of people. So that's comes up.
I use
that's
Ancestry DNA for mine. Mine probably has a different sort of measurement.
Yeah, I find that 23andMe have really cleared up a lot of their ancestral stuff much better. Even though they don't specialize in that, they're actually using like haplogroups, actual ethnic groups and concentrations of specific phenotypes that are in those regions. So they're getting a more accurate, like on your ancestry and on things like traits like this. So I find that it's actually, that's why I usually recommend it, because you're going to get better accuracy plus the other additional stuff. So I'm at 81%, and that's the amount of variance they found. Nearly 300, 280, 298. So slightly higher than 2%. And between all the people that are on this site that are registered, and most of them, because it's an American site, most of them are North American, so many of them are Northern European. So 81% of the customers on this site. So don't know what's a bit slow today. Anyway, let's take this time.
My brother's joined the chat, it looks like.
Okay. So dark chocolate, sneeze reflex. So they've got things like that. So each copy of T is associated with being less likely to sneeze after eating dark chocolate. So this is one of those Neanderthal genes that just accidentally, coincides with a food that, these people never consumed. Sort of how nature works sometimes is a funny thing. How coincidentally things can actually, certain genetic traits can affect foods that not even related. Well, maybe chocolate was related to a plant in Europe, but tectonic plate movements and all that, and ancestrally they're linked, but it's over a very long period of time. But there's certain genes that have been conserved over time, and they may have eaten something, and so as a consequence, as starvation foods, and acquired that. That's my only thinking about it. Sprint versus that. Each of the G copies associated with being a better sprinter than a distance runner, and I definitely have one of both copy from the parents. So mixed bag on that. Dark chocolate again, and sense of direction. I don't know, who do I get? Do they have? Let me see. It doesn't say which parent likely. Well, they probably don't know. So from one of them, I did get probably my mother. She didn't have good direction. So I've got one there. And I'm a map maker, cartographer. Can you believe that? I tend to have good direction. So maybe that's been suppressed, that gene, in my carnivore diet. I'm joking. So, yes, bit of nonsense there. It's not a bad site. They've actually added a few things. They've changed the design of it now, where I'll refresh, where they've got little like buttons now that you can sort of look at, getting report stuff like that, like my wake up time. Around 7:35. And more of a night person. And I know that. So I'm less of a morning person. I'm more of a night person. I always have been. Even last night, I was up until about well over past 2 o'clock. So that didn't surprise me at all when I saw that. And I go, okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But normally that's the sort of time that I'll wake up in the morning. Luckily, I only have a 22-minute walk into town to my job, so it's not very far. So if I get out of bed then and shower and shave within about 30 to 40 minutes, I'm usually at work before 9 most of the time. Sometimes I do get up a bit early when I've got some meeting that I have to prepare for, so that's the only time. And I can do up to 10 hours. Most of the time I'm doing about 8.5 to 9 hours, but sometimes I do push it up to 10 hours a day. Yeah, anyway. That's why I've got a double flex day. I've got a flex day. I've got so much flex. I've got a flex day on Friday. We had a public holiday on Thursday, and I've got a flex day tomorrow as well. So might as well burn the time and use it. Yeah, so it's interesting, some of the sort of stuff in that regard. Anyway, I've shown people before. I do need to do a video on the calcium one as well. So that's an important one that I think needs to be done. I think a lot of people don't realize that in the last 10,000 years, we have adapted to certain foods, like the Irish with their excessive consumption of retinol have downregulated carotenoid conversion. A lot of Europeans in particular with high dairy consumption, and the Central Asians and in Mongolia, those people in those regions consume far more dairy. They also tend to have genetics that have downregulated the uptake of calcium. So if you're not eating calcium-rich foods like sardines or dairy, you may be suboptimal. Now, eating a lot of protein will bring in, and vitamin D will bring in more calcium. But if you've got those genetics that have downregulated the absorption, you need to consume more. Just simple as that, compared to other people. And it may be the reason why of the endemic level of osteoporosis amongst Caucasians far more than people from African descent when it comes to osteoporosis and osteopenia and stuff like that. It's just really they're not getting enough. So while an ancestral diet of a steak only, yep, we do need to take in the last 10,000 years of adaptations, because they do have an effect on our requirements. So it's not as, just one style fits all. 10,000 years of some level of adaptation and down-regulation or up-regulation of certain pathways, enzymatic pathways, has meant that some of us need to make slightly different choices on the dietary front in that regard. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, had damn virus a month ago. Oh, nice. Yeah, still got the tingle in the throat. That was a nice thing, an aftertaste. Didn't enjoy that. And yeah, still low on vitamin D on vitamin D lamp. Thoughts on? All I can say is that you may have some malabsorption issues, and it may be because I think you've had issues with your gallbladder, and if you're not producing enough bile, you may not be absorbing enough vitamin D in terms of supplementation. So, a D lamp is probably a better way to get around if you've got malabsorption issues in that regard. Another way is with every meal to take some bile salts to improve absorption and keep your taurine levels up to slowly try and emulsify and reduce some of these issues in your gallbladder. Can take time. It took me months to resolve my gallbladder issue, and even then after that I got sludge. So I didn't actually only get stones. Dad got a stone, got rid of it, he was done. I had months after, like a year, dealing with sludge on and off. So I get lightly tanned feces on and off, and slightly, let's say, loose stools on the occasion here or there. And that was due to a lot of sludge coming through. So it took a long while to sort of resolve itself, and it was frustrating to say the least, unfortunately. So eating plants, use it or lose it, as they say. If you're not using a gallbladder and you've been eating plants for a very long time, I know you were in the past. Even my keto days, I was doing a low protein, high, oxalate, plant-based keto diet with a lot of fats and coconut oils and stuff like that. Like, we thought that this was the new way, not the Atkins approach, but the sort of the new Atkins being promoted, which is a more plant-based variation of keto. So tried that. That was fun. Just 5 years, 4 kidney stones, and a whole lot of other issues. So no thanks. I wish I'd never done that. In a sense, I wish I'd gone from a standard diet to a carnivore diet, because it actually such a plant-based, plant-heavy keto diet gave me additional problems, caused me additional problems that I didn't really need to have.
That's a good point. Like, people, they sort of go from a standard American diet where they're eating like crisps and sweets and chocolate and sandwiches. Then they sort of take all that out, then add in a load of vegetables. Then they're thinking like, I feel worse on this. They're adding in fruit, veg. They should feel better, but it's sort of disrupting their gut a lot of the time. Just wanted to make one point as well about the vitamin D. Some people have seen a benefit from taking it more so around the way the sun comes out, sort of thing. So if you take it at 11, 12, the midday sun,
that's what I take it.
Yeah, I take mine about 11 as well. And people also have it with a fatty meal, ideally. So like you said about the bile salts,
yes,
try and get it all in.
So I never take it on its own. Yeah, I always take it with a fatty meal at about 11ish. Because I'm usually at work, so I'll usually have some biltong, and I'll have some pork rinds and stuff like that. So there's a lot of fat there, and that's sort of I sort of combine those two. Have a bit of dairy as well at about the same time, so I'm getting plenty of fat at that time. And usually I will have a small yogurt as well. I just keep a yogurt in my fridge at work, so Greek yogurt, so it's there. And so I get plenty of fat at the same time. So it's probably the reason why as well. Yeah, that's a good point. You got to have it with sufficient fat foods. I mean, okay, it's got a bit of that capsule which has got coconut oil in it, but that's not enough.
It has to be, it has to be a meal, really. It
has to be. You need the bile. That's why.
Yeah.
You can't absorb fat-soluble vitamins without the bile. It just doesn't work. So you got to have it with a meal. So if you're not having it with a meal, and that's a really good point. So yes. So Anika, if you're not having it with a meal, you've got to have it with a meal. And usually if you're having it between 11 and 12, you're going to have it with a meal naturally in that period. Yeah. And that's the right sort of, because the highest intensity of UV is at about 11. It's the right time to take a vitamin D tablet anyway, capsule, whatever.
Yes, like you said before, like supplementing with different things it's got a time and a place, but it really does actually have a time. Some things are better taking early in the day or later in the day. You can be quite specific. Like, you wouldn't take, if you can take a caffeine tablet or drink coffee, you might not drink it at night, sort of thing. It's going to keep you up. So
yeah, precisely.
Same principle. Yeah.
And I think, as I've said, I always eat in daylight most of the time. I try to stick to daylight eating because it goes with the circadian rhythms. Yeah, look, deuterium in water is 100 in tap water. It's 150 parts per million. In seawater is 155 parts per million. Most sugars are around about the 150 mark. There are some that are slightly below. So if you're looking at things like in the 148, 146, 145 range, you'll find things like beans, legumes, lentils. Yeah, they usually tend to be below 150, even better than water. Those sort of that sort of family of foods. And then when we're looking at things like potatoes and stuff like that, that are about the same as water, around about the 150 mark. When you're looking at refined carbohydrates, they're anywhere between 150 to 160. It depends on the refinement, the type of processing and all that. Table sugar is around about 155 parts per million. And which is the other? Honey. That's right, honey. Honey is anywhere between 150 to 160 plus. Depends on the season. Depends on the season when it was collected. Commercial honey is collected in different periods of the year, but in nature, honeybees don't collect their honey. They tend to collect it at specific times of the year only. So what they do is they send out vibrations from their wings. This is real science. I just never got around doing a video on it. I was going to do it, and then I thought, is it really that important? You know. Anyway, if anybody wants to study, I'll send it. I'll put a link for it. But they use like they vibrate their wings, and the frequency is tuned to deuterium. I'm not kidding you. It's true. They synchronize, and once they get a good deuterium, the more deuterium the flower has concentrated, the pollen, the sort of the what is it called? Is it the oscillation? I can't remember now. It's not the oscillation. So when you get a sort of tone of a sort of intensity of the vibration, or the sort of the acoustic sort of frequencies that are coming back to the wings of the actual of the bee, and it can sense the concentration of deuterium, and the concentration of deuterium will tell it what the concentration of sugar is in it. And it usually picks and chooses based on that information from different pollen. That's how it sort of works. That is why I think somebody asked Salad Boy Saladino, one of my subs did, and said, have you checked yourself for your deuterium levels in your body or something like that? You brushed him off immediately. But yeah, I mean, honey is one of those very high deuterium foods, because the bees are actually looking for that sort of, because they use deuterium as a growth factor. Remember, unlike us that use oxidative phosphorylation, a lot of animals still use for energy. They still use fermentation, reverse Krebs cycle. So, they actually utilize, they need deuterium in order to basically provide themselves with greater growth factors. So it's part of that requirement for them to build up those energy stores in those, in their hives, basically. So they need that energy to be able to feed their young ones, the worker bees and all that. So, the concentration is really important. And also they need those high deuterium levels to be able to act as a growth factor for the young ones as well. So that's all part of what's happening. So yeah, I actually consider honey the worst, fruit the second worst, in that sort of order when it comes to carbohydrates. In terms of naturally occurring carbohydrates, when it comes to honey and refined sugars, are more or less the same. When it comes to processed packaged foods that come out of a factory, sometimes it can be slightly even higher than 165, depending on the manufacturing process and all that, and how much water content was removed, and that will concentrate the deuterium that's left behind in the non-water molecules. So yeah, it can vary depending very much on manufacturing processes. But yeah, that's very dependent on a lot of things. Pavel, so yeah, if you look at beans, legumes, basically, they will have lower than water, but most other carbohydrates will be equal to water or above. G'day, Dave. How are you, mate? G'day, Nathan.
All right, Nathan.
I'll just leave you to answer that, and I'll have a bit of my milky coffee.
I think he asked this question last time.
Did he? Okay.
I think he was saying something about like static holds or something like that. Yeah, basically what I said is they've basically done different studies where they've got people to do, a static hold or just the positive part of the movement, so the pushing part, or they've done the negative part, so that's the part where you let the muscles stretch. They've basically found that the stretched portion, doing that part of the movement, produces the most muscle growth. I guess that's because you're about 30% stronger. You can use 30% more muscle fibers to lower the weight. So that would be probably the best method for muscle hypertrophy. Static contractions probably useful. I mean, sometimes if I'm in a position in my training where I don't want to maybe risk injury, or I just want to get a bit more tension but not add another set, I might do a static hold at the end. So for example, I do my 8 to 20 repetitions, and say so I was doing 15 reps, say the 15th rep is like the last rep I can possibly do. What I might do is I might just hold it for like 1, 2, maybe 3 seconds. Usually that'd be around the mid-range. If it's at the top, you're not putting tension through the muscle in a lot of cases. If it's at the bottom, it's relaxed. So you got to find your range. It's very individual, and it does depend on the movement you're doing. So that's what I'd probably answer to that question.
Okay. I'm just going to put... There's Jonathan's channel. Go and subscribe. And I'll pin that on the top on the message board so you can't miss it.
Yeah, my content at the moment is I've had issues with the uploads. But I'm getting better. It's all a learning curve. I'm not a pro like Bart yet, so I am working on it. So you just keep that in mind.
He's just such a pro because he's got basically yellow Ted adjusting his knobs.
he's orchestrating the whole situation, isn't he?
It's all yellow Ted. That's a real. It's the master behind the throne. The real power. Thank you, Angela. Appreciate it. Yes, the true power behind the throne. Yes, yellow Ted. If one is magnesium deficient, would it be a good idea to limit milk consumption? Because I heard that excessive calcium inhibits magnesium absorption in the intestines, Not really. Not really. We don't see that for populations anywhere around the world that are consuming, milk. So there's a lot of nonsense on that. It's like earlier I was talking about the glycine stuff. A lot of naturopaths believe, glycine, you'll actually just produce a lot of oxalate. Well, they did experiments, one back in 90, I can't remember, 94, 96. And then there was a recent one that I read in 21, and it pretty much came up with similar results when they looked supplemented group, non-supplemented group. They couldn't see much additional excretion, which pretty much meant it was neither affecting excretion or uptake. And if there was more being produced, where was it? So yeah, pretty much that's a busted. Most people have not seen either one of those studies, and it's probably the reason why that myth still persists within the naturopathic community.
I think
Now,
there's
the other thing
another
about
reason.
what's that?
Well, I've seen a lot of supplements going around where they sort of balance the zinc and copper. So people are trying to get more of one thing and the other. They think, well, I need to take a bit more of this to balance it out, but they just have it taking in more minerals, but still having the same balance. So if they are deficient in one and having too much in because they're eating in excess of one particular food product, then they're just counteracting that whole possible benefit by taking the supplement.
Yeah, I think taking a supplement actually can cause more problems.
Especially
because, taking something in a food matrix is a bit different. And when it comes in a food matrix, it's in such a way where you like supplements. Usually, it's like it's the reason why the way a lot of supplements work. They rapidly come into the system far more rapidly than a natural food matrix type approach. Where in a food matrix, you will get small amounts, like meat. You'll slowly break it down in your stomach as you're digesting it. Digestive fluids over 4 hours. So that's one reason why you get satiety, because it just takes so damn long to break down proteins into simple amino acids and fatty acids, the fats into fatty acids. So then you can start absorbing them. So it takes a while, and that's the satiety factor that is playing a role there. So as that stuff comes through, it comes through slowly in small amounts. That's why the uptake of proteins is much higher from real food. You don't end up in the bowl as much because you're getting it in quantities, and then metalloproteins that are all these peptides sort of that are along the enteric system. The gut wall, so to speak. Let me use non-scientific terms. The gut wall, they will basically pick up certain types of minerals, and your body will know, well, we need this, so we'll pick up that. We need more of this or that, and it usually works in that sort of regard. When you overload it with one, that's when you can actually create a deficiency of others. So that's why I don't encourage people to supplement magnesium or these sort of things, because they're not getting it in the right small amounts coming through, taken up in the amount at a normal physiological uptake, what's expected naturally to be uptaken. Because at the end of the day, if you're getting enough taurine, you're actually if you're not getting enough in of a certain mineral, actually the body will recycle it back in and hold on to it.
Yeah.
As long as you're not drinking a lot of water and dumping electrolytes or minerals, ions, and you've upregulated your antidiuretic hormones, which all normal mammals do. Even in nature, you don't see animals really drinking much water. They basically live off fat. They hydrate via fat, and their urine is quite darker, very yellowy. You look at any animal. I've heard it, goats, and I know their urine is very dark yellow. So ours tend to be quite light, and mine tends to be still on the lightish side. It's still a bit of yellow, but on the lightish side. And I put it down to even the couple of cups of coffee that I have a day is enough, that extra hydration that I'm taking in, exogenous, is enough to basically dilute my urine. So it's not as, where when I was doing my sort of dry fasts, it took me until the third day before my urine started looking anything like those goats, where it was a deeper yellow. And even then, it didn't really get to that level. And I was surprised. I said, damn, I've been doing it for 3.5 days. What the hell's going on? Why isn't it? Actually, I was just urinating very small amounts because you didn't have to. The body was filtering out, recycling the actual water and holding on to the water since you weren't taking in any. And you're releasing just enough physiological as you were breaking down and producing water by breaking down fats, and you're releasing any excess that the body didn't need. That's how the body's supposed to work. That's how it is supposed to homeostatically be regulated. So, yeah, I really find that a lot of people supplementing are wasting a lot of money on stuff and causing themselves more derangements and problems in the long run and not improving their health. The best thing to do is reduce your water intake slowly, not quickly, because you need time to adjust. And if you're not fat adapted, you will end up dehydrating yourself because you can't produce water endogenous if you're not fully fat adapted. So you have to make sure you're fat adapted. And you'll know very quickly. And the easiest way of actually realizing that is when you go do a dry fast and your energy just drops like mad, you know immediately you're not fat adapted, because you should go into a dry fast from a low ketotic state and have no drop in energy. On the opposite, your energy should go slightly up. That will tell you quite clearly you're not fat adapted sufficiently or able to switch over to, increasing the release of free fatty acids and fat into the system for energy. So you'll realize that very quickly. So if you're in that sort of state, then you can very easily drop the water. And look, when you drop water, and I usually say to people, drop it slowly, not rapidly. If you're drinking, a couple of liters, drop it to 1.5 liters, then drop it to a liter, then drop it to half a liter. And so as you drop it down, what will happen is your body will adjust. You have to give it a couple of weeks to adjust, at those lower settings. But eventually you'll get to the stage where the body's going, okay, less water's coming in. I need to conserve a bit more water and dump less. And it starts upregulating the antidiuretic hormones. That's how it works. And if you get enough taurine in there, it regulates it perfectly. That whole mechanism. Obviously, getting it from food is the best, but as we said, we don't live ancestrally, and we do have a lot of things that actually deplete our sulfur amino acids, unfortunately. So do keep that in mind. I think a lot of us are throwing away good money, which we could use for holidays and many other things. Computer games. Yes, I can go with that one. Then basically wasting it on friggin' mineral supplements. Can gluconeogenous provide enough energy for high intensity training? I believe so, because it's demand driven. And that's when you exercise really strong, your actually blood glucose goes up, because the body's trying to overcompensate and say, oh, I need to actually pump out more because this person really needs the glycogen. And so it actually goes over. But the resident time isn't like forever. It does drop off as you lower your exercise. After you've done your intensive exercise, it will drop off back to lower physiological levels, because the body will realize, okay, the demand's dropped. Let's down-regulate slightly the gluconeogenesis because we don't need as much. But initially, as you're exercising, your body will overcompensate and produce far more. So your blood glucose will definitely go over 5. Easy. In millimoles, that is. What's your take on your experience?
Yeah, sorry, I can hear you perfectly fluidly. It's just the lag on the StreamYards is a bit slow, so it doesn't pop up quickly.
Okay.
But yeah, my experience Well, I've consumed for about a 9-month straight period over 500 grams of protein a day. Doing between 150 200 fat. It's more of an experiment, if anything, just to see how much could I push it and how much would I need to sort of maintain my training performance. And I noticed I didn't have any drop off. The only point where I had a drop off was where my body fat was so low. But that happens to
Obviously.
everyone. Once you're less body weight, you're less to move with. So, I mean, you just have to provide enough body, enough protein and fat. I mean, you got me, Sean Baker, Anthony Chaffee, probably loads of other sort of carnivore ancestral sort of, maybe not bodybuilders or but like elite athletes sort of thing. They can do it. So, the average person, is going to be able to sustain it, and I think quite well.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, and the thing is, it's also, there is a bit of physiological sort of protective sort of way the body works, where it will increase some level of fatigue deliberately to protect the muscles from additional damage. That's the other thing. So the drop off isn't necessarily it's sort of telling you, yeah, you've exceeded your level of physiological endurance, and you've done sufficient muscle damage, and now the body needs. I know some bodybuilders do use arachidonic acid supplements to try and actually push through that and sort of push the envelope. So I mean, I don't know whether you've used arachidonic acid in the past for that purpose.
I think I've used it once, had like a sample sort of serving, and I noticed I was very inflamed, and I was sore, very sore.
It is. It makes you sore. That's
my
true.
first workout. Yeah. So we'll sort of put you more in the sort of direction of, you've done a lot of damage here. Your body's going to need to sort of bolster up its resources to maintain what you're trying to do.
Yeah, but the next time you do it, you actually can do it for longer. That's the benefit you get.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But yes, there is pain in all these things. Just letting people know.
It's hard. It's hard work. As long as it's good pain, you can recognize it's good pain, then it's not an issue really.
That's right.
Recover from it. So.
Yeah. Stefan, hi Harry. How's it going? Why is Sally H. Norton speaking of cloudy urine, oxalate dumping, and you a foamy one difference?
Urea cycle thing. Yeah.
I mean, maybe we're speaking about the same stuff. I don't know. We're just using different terminology for it. In that, I mean, mine is at the same time my urine, when I did have some level of cloudiness, but it also was foamy. Maybe when it comes out of the penis, it becomes more foamy because it's coming out of the penis, and it may be different for women. I don't know. That's an interesting thing.
I've got some insight on that. So
do you? Okay.
Yeah. So it's quite a bizarre topic, but I can cover it anyway. When I'm consuming higher protein, there is more foam in my urine. So as I approach 300 grams plus, it is foamy. It's more bubbly sort of thing. When it's lower, it's less foamy. But what she's speaking about in the cloudiness is that's actually like the residual oxalate dumping, kind of like it's your filtration system's not working very well. Your kidneys are struggling. That's what I think she's trying to say.
Okay, so that may be the difference
that
between
myself
that
when
sort
my
of.
kidneys are a bit stressed. Yeah.
So you got more of the cloudiness.
That's right.
Yeah, I used to. Okay, that makes sense, because years ago when I had the kidney stones, when I was doing keto, it was more, when I did have some of this sort of episodes, it was more sort of cloudy. It wasn't foamy. But when I was doing carnivore, it was actually more foamy. which means that my kidneys must have been much better state, even though I was dumping, and that's why I wasn't getting cloudiness. I was getting more foaminess. Oh, so that's the difference. Okay,
What you find is if you put it into a tube or something, or a cup, if
that
you've
makes
ever done a
sense.
urine test, it will sediment towards the bottom. So that it gives you an indication that your body's not breaking itself down.
Mine exactly. Yeah, I can relate to that because I think I was actually getting more damage at the time because I was eating all those oxalate-rich foods like spinach and all that, and it was definitely much more cloudy. So it was definitely proteins, the damage within the nephrons and stuff like that was happening because of, when now, it was actually just a light yellow with a lot of foaminess to it. So basically, I wasn't getting the damage, but I was still getting the foaminess because of the oxalates as I was clearing out of the system. Okay, that makes sense because obviously I'm taking taurine, which is protects the kidneys from injury, from renal injury, and it makes sense. So I was protecting myself, but at the same time, I'm still dumping. So obviously, it was creating a foamy interaction with the fluids and the crystals. Yeah. Okay. There probably is a difference. So, and remember, more of her clients that she has are more people that are keto, low carb, vegetarians, vegans that tend to consume much more plants.
Yeah.
And that makes a hell of a lot more sense. They'd be getting far higher oxalate intake. They'd be doing far more damage to their kidneys. And that sort of makes sense. What I experienced in my 5 years of 4 kidney stone issues, I didn't get any foamy, and so I never put it down at the time. Now it makes sense. I never put it down to oxalate dumping back then, or oxalates coming through the system because it was cloudy. I had no idea what it was. Just that I had kidney stones, and sort of I didn't even think about the two. But now it makes sense. I was probably sustaining quite a bit of damage, and there was a whole lot of proteins in there. That was why it was cloudy back in the keto days, where now that with the plant-based heavy keto type diet that I was doing, so now with the oxalates coming out in a carnivore state, they're more taurine that I put in my diet, which is renoprotective, and makes sense. Okay, clears up a lot of things, even for me. There you go. I learned something today. Oh, are you? Well, thanks, mate. Thanks. That's the thing that I forgot. I forgot my blue blocking glasses. Ugh.
Yeah. You weren't wearing them earlier, were you? In the previous podcast.
And it's past my 7 o'clock thing. It's 8:10 now. So, oh, damn. Got this.
My girlfriend actually noticed you weren't wearing your glasses in the one from, I think, last night. I was like, oh, probably a different time of day over there or something. I don't know.
What's that?
My girlfriend noticed that you weren't wearing your glasses in the last live stream with Lukey.
Oh, well, that was in the morning. So
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
yeah. But in the evening, I put these on. But I've been running around like a mad. A chook with like a mad chook with my head cut off. Trying to get my meal done, as you know, so shoving it down my throat as fast as possible, and then trying to get my laundry sorted. I put it all up, and it's just all blur. Get my coffee done, and my milk coffee, and so I wasn't. I was just going crazy, trying to get things done, and still I was late in my live stream.
Oh, well. I only made it 5 minutes to anyway. I'm usually a bit earlier than that.
Normally, I'm just a couple of minutes over, a couple of minutes, in that regard, and it's always just trying to set things up. But very rarely do I go like half an hour. That was a bit extreme, even for me.
That's all right.
I have genes with high blood serum levels of magnesium, potassium. Yeah, look, some people, there are different genetics that people have, and it may mean you may need, that's exactly right. And you may be one of those people that require slightly higher sodium and higher calcium to balance those ions. So, because inside the cell, you should have you need calcium even for energy production. So, and sodium for energy production. But you don't need a lot. Magnesium plays a bigger role, magnesium ATP, and you also need potassium inside the cell. Outside the cell, you need more, like seawater, more calcium, and more sodium. So that's the sort of, and taurine actually regulates because it's a natural calcium channel blocker, taurine. So, but it's not like drugs which just block. It's sort of like it's a regulator. Sort of, it actually like puts slightly the brakes on and controlling where calcium goes in a sense. So it's a bit like a soft hand of controlling the movement of calcium and the regulation of calcium homeostasis in the system. But it is a natural calcium channel blocker. And it tries to, as it moving the ions along the cell membrane, it tries to make sure that the right positive negatives are in the right combination to maintain electroneutrality along the cell membrane. Don't want things sparking, but they don't. Naturally, they don't. The body's got a lot of systems to prevent that from happening. But taurine plays a very important role in preventing the derangement of that system, so to speak. So it's a sort of a very important molecule in that regard. So, I mean, you're taking a bit of taurine, which helps. You need to avoid these supplements if you've got those sort of genetics, and really you need to focus on sodium and calcium. You may have also my genetics, similar to my genetics. I'm going to do a video shortly to cover the calcium genes and why some people can't uptake sufficient and may need to consume far more than others. So that's a very important thing. Anyway, Sammy, how are you? Is M&M same as what you mentioned? No, it's not. No, it's not. It's different. It's actually through the niacin pathway, because you've got the tryptophan. You've got also the reduced form, which the sirtuins and all that sort of in that. It's in that lower part of that recycling part, is nicotinamide comes through that part. And it's part of the niacin, because all of it's niacin, but niacin complex. It's a sub part. Most of even vitamins tend to be a complex. Like even vitamin C is a complex. It's not just ascorbic acid. That's sort of the outer coating layer. It's an actual complex. It's got other parts to it. So that's really important that we understand that sort of difference. M&M, we thought went through the salvage pathway, which is that bottom pathway. But recent research is telling us the receptor sites that uptake M&M are slightly different. So even David Sinclair got that wrong. He actually thought that it went through the salvage pathway, and everybody was wrong in the sort of the longevity community when it came to M&M. So it's sort of the whole book now. It's the whole notion how it happens. It's actually been rewritten, and it actually comes in at a stage. I think it's about 4 enzymatic steps down from niacin complex 4. I think it's 4 or 3. I can't remember now. And yeah, it's where it actually happens. But it's, look, at the gut wall or the gut area, there's an enzyme that actually has to cleave part of it off in order to make it absorbable. So there's always been a question mark how much gets absorbed and all that and whatever. And then how much do you need? Let's put it this way. Okay, for the redox of the electron chain, so your redox system, even at the electron chain, yes, you do need some NAD, but how much is enough? How much can, taking more in doesn't actually correct. If that part of the system has actually sustained some level of damage and it's not, and the redox potential of within the mitochondria has actually been somehow compromised to some extent, adding more M&M or NAD precursors of anything, including niacin, nicotinamide or whatever, isn't going to correct an underlying issue in energy production, because you've got something structural there that's not working properly, so to speak. This is where these longevity people have really got it wrong. I think they're wasting a lot of money on stuff that they can actually get by eating real food and getting those nutrients. Piggy's quite high, and so is tuna quite high in niacin complex. So, why spend all the money? It is. It's a waste of money as far as I'm concerned.
30 British pounds a month, easily.
Yeah.
So whatever that's got, like 50 American dollars or something,
Precisely. Speeding up artificially any system isn't going to basically make it work better or actually produce more ATP. It's just not going to, guys. Obviously, if you're somebody who's not getting enough niacin in their diet, obviously this will help those people on a SAD diet or people on a vagunarized diet or whatever. Taking this will help them because they're deficient in these nutrients, in these B vitamins. So once you take this, you're actually getting an improvement in redox potential. But that doesn't mean, that's all about moving between the complexes, electrons. That's what it's all about, what we call this redox potential. So how efficiently that happens is the potential, how well it is, whether it's reduced or increased to the optimal physiological range. But fundamentally, Sammy, don't waste your money. Save it up. Put that away. You'll make enough to basically have a great Christmas party with a lot of meat. So there's a lot of stuff we waste a lot of money on. Oops. Thanks, Nathan.
Cheers.
Yeah, there's a lot of nonsense out there in the longevity community. So, yeah.
Look at who they're sponsored by as well a lot of the time.
That's true.
NMN Special Supplement Company and NAD Pathway this, that, and
yeah,
be very, very careful. If you just look at their descriptions and see, sponsored by this, all right, well, maybe that's why they can have all this reductionist sort of information. And
yes, very much so. Well, they don't drink a lot of water. All cats consume a bit of water, and it really comes down to they require. They seem to actually have a bit of a requirement for water in terms of for their stomach acidity type thing, which is where it's really playing a role for them. Rather than it's not like hydration, because they're not sitting there drinking water all day. Most of the time what they do is they'll go kill an animal, eat its organs to get the nutrient density and all that, so they don't have to eat for a couple of days because they've got so high nutrient density, there's no requirement. There's actually a tribe in Africa, not in Africa, in Central America, in the Amazon. They consume quite a lot of organ meats, less muscle meats, but a lot of the organs, and they only eat once every 3 days. So they abstain from eating, a bit like the lions, nearly. And yeah, they get very high nutrient density, and they get also high taurine from the, especially liver and heart and stuff like that for those organ meats, which pretty much means that they can regulate their electrolytes along those other days that they're not eating. So and they get very high B vitamins from those organ meats as well, and fat soluble vitamins and everything they need. So, they're doing something similar to the lions. And they do also consume some water, because when you're consuming like muscle meat, you tend to get far more of a lot of the subcutaneous fats and stuff like that at the same time, quite a lot. And that can play a role for a lot of things as well, for hydration within the body and hydration for, stomach acidity and a lot of other things. Yeah, so it's probably a potential explanation, but that's me speculating on what's possibly happening based on what these other people are doing in the Amazon. But obviously they're humans and these are lions. So yeah. Any ideas, Jonathan?
It could be just I look at the environment they're in. So if they're eating meat, sort of like they've got a carcass, it's dried out of the water, the blood and the liquid sort of seeped out. Is that maybe why they're trying to raise their alkalinity so they've got the right sort of stomach acid balance for them? Is that maybe why? I don't know.
Well, they tend to actually consume more of the organs, the cats. They don't really consume much of the muscle meat. So the muscle meat's actually got more of the fluids.
Maybe they're diluting the
water. I think organ. Yeah, they're not getting enough. They're not getting. When you eat muscle meat has got far more water content than organ meats. And I think the reason why they're actually hitting the muscle, they're hitting the water, because they're just not getting enough hydration. So, because if you take a look at meat, it's got 26% on average, 27 to 25, depending on which cuts of meat or whatever. So 26% protein. You got, depending on the type of animal, 15 to 27% fat in there. You're nearly halfway, and the rest is nearly mostly water content. So, when you go for the organ meats, they have far less water content, and it could be just they need to get to the water content from, because you still need some water content for digestion.
It doesn't cook down to much when you cook like liver. You lose just a bit of water sort of from the evaporation.
It doesn't have much in it. That's why.
Not a lot.
So I think they need. Yeah, I think they need to get hydration from somewhere, and including to be able to digest, for digestive juices to be generated. Where meat naturally, half of it's basically water, which pretty much means there's enough water there to create for digestive juices to, So I think that's the only plausible reason. I haven't looked into the research, obviously, but I'm speculating. But I think that's the most plausible reason for it, because it just doesn't make sense otherwise. Because I'm just going on what these tribal people in the Amazon do. These 3-day eating. So anyway, interesting. Wasn't expecting a question like that, Stefan. It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Yes. But I really think that's the reason organ meats just don't have enough fluids. So it makes logical sense if you're going to get enough sufficient fluids for digestive fluids. So you've got enough fluids for digestion, and you probably need to drink some water. It's probably where it's sort of coming from. That's the only thing that makes logical sense to me through extrapolation. Hi, how are you? When you say fibrosis, you've repaired in terms of heart health. Yep, I got discharged by the cardiologist for that in the heart muscle or related vascular, because the virus thing led me to believe that the heart muscle is, not sure what you were writing, trying to say,
Not
is just about
repairable.
the only muscle that can't be repaired. Nope. Look, it depends on the type. Like if you have a really severe heart attack, and because I had a mild I had angina, which basically means shortness of breath. I had, some level of very small cardiac episode, and so the amount of damage would have been very minimal. But severe cardiac damage, yes, that can create a lot of what is called hypoxic environments. That means blood cuts off to a large part of the tissue, and because it drops, and then you get red blood perfusion coming in, and when the blood comes in with a lot of oxygenation, there's massive oxidative stress that happens, and even more damage happens to the muscle. And that can take a very long time to heal and repair. And most people, because they're on a standard shit diet, they never achieve that in their life. Okay. Now, I had the shortness of breath and all that. I was proactive. I said, there's something wrong here, not working properly. And rather than just basically doing the typical thing and saying, oh yeah, she'll be all right, mate, and just cruising on and not thinking about it, I went and got it checked out. And I used to be a smoker in the past, and I thought, oh God, I got cancer. That's what I thought immediately. I had cancer. Potentially, I did ask them when they checked me out, did you find any cancer? And they go, no. Okay. So what is it? They go, oh, we've got an irregular heart beat. Okay, we need to do further investigation. And then they did, and they realised they had, nearly 90% blockage. So they go, well, Mr. Serpanos, you can walk out of here and drop dead tomorrow, or that's it. The cardiologist, he was an old cardiologist in his sort of probably early 70s. He was one of those old fellows, and he's just bluntly saying, he wasn't mincing words, and we can do surgery on it. And he said, apparently, one of the junior doctors told me that we have an opening tomorrow. So, do you want us to cut you open? So he was blunt about it. No, there was no bedside manner with this guy. And I said, well, why wait? I said to him, let's get it over with. If it's that bad, let's sort it. And that's what happened the next day. The next morning I was in, getting my chest ripped open and being put under, and my heart taken out of my cavity and being surgically dealt with, so to speak. Yeah, and the rest is history. So it depends how damaged it is, and it depends on what your diet is and stuff like that, and what your nutrition, how well. All muscles damage, even your leg muscles, any muscle can damage, ligaments can damage, and many other things. But people can still have recovery of ligaments and improve ligaments even after damage. So as long as they're getting enough protein, as long as they are doing the eliminating all the stuff that's inflaming them, basically, and doing the right things. And you can, one nice thing about taurine, it does reduce fibrotic tissue. So it actually breaks down fibrotic tissue everywhere in the body, whether it's in the joints, whether it's in the heart, whether it's in the lungs, whether it's in the brain, whether it's in any fibrosis in the kidneys, liver, pancreas, you name it. Wherever there is fibrosis or oxidative stress, it lowers it. It's actually been shown that it protects against red blood perfusion. So if you've had a stroke or a heart attack and there is red blood perfusion and a lot of massive oxidative stress, you supplement that person heavily with taurine, and you'll prevent that sort of severe damage from happening. And they've done the experiments with animals where they've deliberately induced cardiac episodes and stuff like that and strokes, and actually seen after red blood perfusion the protective effect. And there's also been some studies where they've actually, in clinical environments, where they've given taurine supplementation to people that have had heart attacks or strokes, and they've improved much better than the other groups in the non-intervention groups, the ones that were on a placebo. So yes, it does help in that regard, bring down fibrosis. So yes, you can improve things. But if you're not on a species appropriate diet, you're eating still junk and inflaming yourself, no, that's not going to happen. Yeah, then they're right. Then it's progressively just going to get worse. They're completely right about that. And most people are on a standard diet. They don't make radical changes. And so, yes, they will get worse. That's the standard thing. I was the first person in Tasmania to ever be discharged by the cardiology. Cardiologist told me bluntly, we've never had somebody discharged from this clinic. People get worse. You're the first person that got better. You know, so it's quite clear, you know, what changes things and what doesn't. So people need to make their own choices on that, but that's the reality. So the first person in Hobart to no longer, I don't have to go back to the cardiology. I'm done.
That's good to hear.
Well, carnival made my mineral deficiency worse, but I went in overnight and I had diarrhea almost every day. So I think that's why. Yeah, that's probably why. Yeah, look, some people rushing. You've got to go slowly into carnivore and adjust. I know Bart has dealt with a number of people transitioning them to carnivore. Go and consult with Bart and get him to, because he's got a plan that sorts these problems out and actually gets people sorted out in terms of slowly sorting, you know, he puts them on, he's got a protocol, certain foods and stuff like that, and slowly gets them to normalize and then transition again over a number of months. I think it's 6 months or something like that, or, you know, a number of months until they can smoothly transition across. Because it takes time. If you do it slowly, you don't get these problems. If you do it fast, you seem to derange a whole lot of things, and it seems it takes longer then to adjust back. So, and it's probably for a number of reasons. There's also the reason you may have like NecroKitty. NecroKitty, for instance, she's on Bart's Discord, and, you know, she tried a lot of different things and just wasn't working. She came to me and I said to her, look, you've got a deranged gut microbiome. You're not going to fix it with the stuff you're doing at the moment. And I got her to take a certain type of Ruteri. It's one of my videos. If you go in the gut playlist, you'll find it. And what it did was it suppressed a whole lot of pathogenic bacteria. And once she suppressed a lot of those gut bacteria, she took the B vitamins for 3 months and also vitamin D at 10,000 IUs, because beneficial bacteria do require more B vitamins, because they exchange B vitamins, and also vitamin D. And what happened was the beneficial bugs grew. The Ruteri suppressed the pathogenic bugs. And after that, she normalized. But then she realized she was getting constipated. So she got rid of 2 years of diarrhea, and then she had constipation. And she came back and I said, what are you doing? She said, oh, I'm doing some dairy and stuff like that, because she was doing dairy kefirs and a number of things. And I go, okay. I said, you can't process the dairy properly, and you cannot, you don't have enough lactobacillus. I said, because you've done antibiotics for most of your life, and you did glyphosate, which is an antibiotic mimicking compound, you've basically really knocked for 6 all the lactobacillus, which you would have inherited from your mum when you went through her birth canal. And so I said, well, you need to restore your lactobacillus. So she started doing these kefirs and stuff like that, and putting in lactobacillus type different strains. She got a broad spectrum, and that fixed it all up. And with taurine and all that, she's basically based to pooping normally. So doing a number 4, as they called. So, yeah. So she went through a bit of hell for about 2.5 years until, you know, she sorted out her gut microbiome. So it took her a while, but it can be fixed, you know. So, you know, that I don't know if that's your problem, you know. Now you could go on Discord, and because I don't do any consultancies, I just don't have the time, guys. It's just, you know, I did a few in the early days. I just couldn't do them. I just didn't have enough time. And I was just doing it for cancer for patients only. I was prioritizing people with very high risk issues, like close to death. So that were the only people that I spent a bit of time. And even then, I sort of ran out of time. That's why I accelerated doing a lot of my cancer videos, and I prioritized them. That's why there's a whole playlist that was deliberate, because I needed to liberate time, so I didn't have to do any free consultancies for these people. The information was there for them to use. So that was, yeah, pretty much in that part. But if you go onto Bart's Discord and talk to NecroKitty, she'll actually tell you all the supplements that I emailed her, and she went through and just get the information off her in that regard, and that will save me the effort of actually having to do it. Be proactive, you know, get there, get on Discord, have a bit of fun with Lukey and the NecroKitty. Anyway, moving on. That was the other part. And Anouk, thanks, mate.
Cheers.
I better get down to you. Still a bit behind. Going into 10 days wet fast. Stopped taurine supplementation. I'm fat adapted and no bile sludge dumping anymore. Fantastic. Sounds really good. And thanks for both of you for the time and input. You're welcome. Not a problem,
Thank you
mate.
for watching. You're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah. Sometimes I know, bile sludge. Yeah, I struggled with that for about a year. So yeah, I would classify my case as worst case scenario. So, and I probably have myself to blame as well, because I wasn't as proactive about it. So, you know, I didn't basically push myself with the taurine, the fasting, and a lot of other things, and I wasn't as proactive. I said, I'll go away, and then, you know, 6 months go past, and I'm going, shit, it's not going away. And so then I had to pull my finger out and start becoming a bit more proactive about it. You at least follow instructions, which I fail to even follow my own, because I'm an undisciplined person. I've always been an undisciplined person. I don't know how my parents put up with me for so many years, but that's who I am. Can't help it. I'm a maverick. So so I have to sort of take the whip out on myself to commit to things. Yes, I have a tendency to be inconsistent in my own behaviors sometimes. Sometimes I can go for months doing something, and then I'll just drop off the wagon and then find it very hard to jump back on the wagon. It can take me a month to try and force myself back. So it's just my nature, unfortunately. It was horrible. Potassium, insomnia, electrolytes. Yep. Yeah, I think we covered that earlier. All that stuff that Na was actually talking about. Yep. Anyway, Joseph, how are you, mate? Do you have any understanding of the worldwide hum phenomenon? I'm a sufferer and have had near debilitating insomnia for years due to loud, deep bass note in my skull. Luckily, I have heard of it has to do with part of the inner ear, stuff like that. Now, I remember some years back I had basically, you know, some of these tinnitus and some other issues like that, and it used to affect my sleep as well. Taurine actually eliminated tinnitus completely. I found a rat study that actually showed that at a dose dependent, corrected that issue and got rid of the signaling problem within the brain and ear and sorted it out. But I've never investigated your condition. But I do know that it is GABA A affected via GABA A, and I know taurine affects GABA A. So I'm just extrapolating from that. I'd give it a go and see how you went. Now, you do need to be aware that taurine behaves like lithium and it retains lithium. So if you're on lithium tablets, you've got to adjust your meds down if you go over 2 grams. And to sort this problem out, you may have to go as high as 10. It does lower blood pressure, which means that if you're on blood pressure meds, if you go over 2 grams, that's a problem as well. You have to adjust your meds and go slowly as you increase. You have to increase slowly anyway, every week going up 2 grams to adjust your body to it. But if you've got sort of the drugs on top and stuff like that, you may have to persist in lower levels for a bit longer to be able to get the doctor to make the adjustments. So it'll take longer to get to the higher thresholds. But do you know anything about this phenomenon, Jonathan?
I've heard about it, yeah. It seems to be more common the last few years. It could be a number of different things. I don't think it's so much of like a I think it just seems to be affecting a lot of people more. I'm hearing more about it. I don't think it's like I've taken a supplement or I've eaten this food. It's something which seems to be coming up more and more. Like I expect it to be almost like an epidemic sort of level in a few years or at some point,
Okay. Yeah, look, Joseph, do come back. Every fortnight I do a live stream. Do come back then. I'm going to do a bit of investigation into it. And so, because the stuff that I know about is very little in regards to this. I've heard from other people, but hearing it from other people doesn't mean that it's actually correct just because people are regurgitating what they've heard elsewhere. So I'll look and see what the literature shows, whether there's any clinical studies that have actually tried different compounds to see whether something seems to work or have some effect at either normalizing the situation or slightly, reducing it slightly. To sleep at night, plenty of sedatives. Any advice help me to manage. Yeah, as I said, I don't know enough about it. Let me just quickly, because a friend of mine did say something about cortisol, and cortisol is regulated by taurine. But I don't know whether that's true or not.
I think it depends he's saying here he's struggling to sleep like 3 hours a night with sedatives. Obviously that's affected by the humming sound. Could it also be something to do with his blood glucose? Is he getting some sort of maybe like a cortisol spike at some point in the night?
If you've got high cortisol, it will suppress melatonin. So, and the only way of actually normalizing cortisol at night is to basically take probably 4 grams or more of taurine will bring cortisol back to normal range. Some people require up to 10 to bring it down to normal range. Don't ask me why. No idea. This is just anecdotes of people that have tried, and I've told them just go up, and then eventually some can at 4 grams they're fine, get to sleep. Some 6, some need 8, and then some need even 10. And I know one guy couldn't actually do. He had to get up to 14 grams before he was able to get to sleep. I go, wow. So yeah, things are different. People have got different reasons. So there's a lot of trial and error, and unfortunately, we don't have sufficient research out there for me to basically say with certainty about some of this sort of stuff. It is annoying that a lot of these things are not being investigated. There seems to be a bit of a lack of interest, which is annoying. Let me see. All I'm getting is low-pitched noise from aircraft and trucks and stuff like that, causing the hum experience phenomenon. I don't think that's the case.
I'll have a look as well.
So it's sort of like hum sufferers describe a low-frequency buzz accompanied by a rumbling vibration. It's worse at night, making it almost impossible to sleep. And this is in Science, how stuff works. Are they giving me anything?
Harry, just thought, could it be anything to do with EMFs?
Hold on. EMFs? No, I don't think so. No, there's no mechanism. I did a video on 5G ages ago with Bart. It's on his Odyssey channel. It's called 5G. If you Google Harry Serpanos, Bart K, 5G, I cover the heat shock proteins. There's no heat shock proteins. In order to have a direct physiological effect, you have to see the rise in heat shock proteins. Doesn't happen. So it can't be that. Non-native EMFs are really electromagnetic fields that are affecting, the sort of circadian, they are in a sense circadian effects, but that's through, there's certain frequencies like the blue light frequencies and stuff like that, why we have this, and what it does is it affects the concentration of DHA. So you end up dumping more DHA. So your requirement for DHA in a non-native EMF environment slightly goes up. And this is another thing, that some people that may be highly exposed or more vulnerable, that may be Joseph's situation, to non-native EMFs, there's a potential where they're dumping more DHA, and that also can affect sleep. And
that explains a lot, actually, for me.
Yeah. And so basically taking something like more DHA, eating more fish, so to speak, because we don't want the rancid oils because they're very dangerous. They've got very high in aldehydes and all that. There is the Rosetta brand, which is the only brand that I recommend of cod liver oil. And that one is, has very low levels of oxidative products. So that's the only one in the market. And that's an option for some people. Or consuming far more, or consuming sardines every day. I usually say to people, if you've got this issue, a can of sardines without oil, just water, can of sardines every day, including your diet as a standard thing to get your DHA, because you may be one of those people that dump more DHA out of the retina and out of the, and your requirements in the brain and your requirements for your needs, DHA needs may be higher than someone else. So that's one potential. So keep that in mind, Joseph. You can try that out. What else are they saying? How the hum works. It starts every night around 10 p.m. when it's about 4 to sleep. Sound is hard to describe. Persistent, low, rumbling like 18-wheeler, ideal idling downside your window, but when you pull the curtains, there's nothing there. My wife thinks you're crazy. She and the neighborhoods don't hear anything. The doctor has ruled out tinnitus, but here we go. Here we are, night after sleepless night, shuffling ward tissue. Okay, so they got baffled researchers since 1970s. Okay, that's been around for a while. First widespread report of the unexplained acoustic phenomenon cropped up in rural England. Armed with highly sensitive instruments, teams of scientists have attempted to hunt down the source of unrelenting noise, resulting in inclusive. Okay. The theories about conspiracy theories, obviously they would happen. So basically they don't really have much of an idea, as I can see. Okay. Interesting sources that they think. Drones. Yeah, look, I don't think it's any of this sort of stuff. I think at the end of the day, it's it makes more. Two things make more sense. You're either needing more DHA because you're dumping. We lost Jonathan, did we? I'll just put that's the article there. You can take a look at it, Joseph. Let me know if some of those symptoms are similar to what you're sort of having an effect. You're welcome. Nah. You're on Bart's Discord. Yeah. Well, I hope you found Necro Kitty there. Yeah. So do check out that. And if you've got some of those symptoms there, I would consider, let me just find it. Okay, if you don't like cod liver, if you don't like, what am I saying? Not cod liver oil. If you don't like sardines, because that may be a problem for some people. You know, everybody's got their own little preference and all that. This is the only company that I would buy from. Now, they do have an Australian website, New Zealand and stuff like that. You have to put AU after it for Australia. And I'll just put that in there. And they do have capsules, so you consume capsules if you want to. And there's the only company that really uses traditional methods of extraction, cold extraction, and so you don't get all these aldehydes and all these primary oxidative products and all that. So if you need to take DHA and you don't appreciate the taste of, you know, this is an option for you. So we've lost Jonathan, so his internet or computer has probably gone down, one of the two. So yeah, anyway, if he comes back, he comes back. If he doesn't, we just continue. Yeah, so give that a bit of a check out, and hopefully you see some improvements. I will look into it in the next fortnight. I'll note it and see what I can come up with. As I said, I've heard a lot of things from different people. But really, to be able to definitively say this channel, we research everything to the nth degree, and only after I've researched things to the nth degree do I basically give people any advice, which is science-based. If I don't have anything, then I say, well, this may be similar to a lot of things, and these are potential options. So your potential options at this stage are the DHA through sardines, preferably. Supplementation like this, which is a much safer supplementation as an alternative. So if it's due to DHA loss due to non-native EMF exposure, I don't know what your life is, you know. Okay, so you're having problems with your computer. That's okay. Jonathan, thanks for being on here. Appreciate it, mate. Yeah, follow if anybody has asked you any questions. Laptop died. Oh, shit happens. Not a problem, mate. Thanks for being on. And people, please, you know, up in the pinned comment there, Jonathan's channel is there. Please go there and subscribe to Jonathan's channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and you know, we need to support Jonathan to, you know, put out some really good content in this space. Now, Raymond, how are you, mate? Oops. He's a different one. Carl? Hi, I was wondering how best to describe the difference between carnivore, keto, and ketogenic. My crude understanding was less vegetables. Thank you. Basically, yeah, you pretty much hit it on the nail. One is animal-based, and the ketogenic is a sliding between, you can actually have a vegan ketogenic diet all the way to a carnivore ketogenic diet. So the ketogenic is a very long thing, but generally when we say keto, we usually mean like a keto diet or a low carb diet. We tend to mean a diet that has animal foods and includes some level of low glycemic load vegetables, which is sort of the way to characterize it in that regard, where a carnivore diet tends to be, mostly animal based with very little vegetation or none. So that's the sort of way of describing it. But your sort of general crude way is just less vegetables. Yeah, basically, in a sense. In fascist Canada, unfortunately, your illustrious leader Trudeau is keeping you under control, keeping those evil truckies under control, and Raymond as well. He's gone crazy, that guy up there. Now he wants to do the same. He wants to do the same thing: destroy the entire agricultural sector and starve all Canadians. What a friggin' lunatic! God, mate, you'll have to move south, get away from the place before you starve to death. He's a lunatic, that guy. He's gone one upmanship against the guy in the Netherlands. Friggin' hell. Crazy stuff. Oh, well, we still haven't got to that loony brigade of going after our agricultural sector. Pretty much it would be any government in Australia would not get elected ever if they did that. The reason for that is you've got in New South Wales and Queensland, you've got one of the biggest agricultural basins in the country. So you've got a massive agricultural basin. Government tried to do something like that here, they would never get back into power ever. So yeah, they're not crazy. They know which way the votes go. But in places like Holland, like the Netherlands, where you've got higher urbanization and less votes coming in from rural areas, there, yeah, they can do it because there they can get away with it because there's less political cost for them, But in places like, Australia, yeah, the political cost would be horrendous. And the Labor Party here tends to have a big, strong trade union element in it. And they would be completely against it. Pretty much they've toppled here the trade union inside the Labor Party. They've toppled basically the last couple of prime ministers and leaders of the Labor Party. So, yeah, it'd be very dangerous for the current prime minister to do something like that here without pretty much the agricultural and the trade union lobby tearing them to pieces and replacing them. So not going to happen here because of that. Potentially could happen in places like New Zealand because there she's a bit of a loony, Jacinda the loony. So there is the potential for that because there's more urbanites that that support her, and under those circumstances, she will suffer less political cost. So the potential is for her to do something like that. Yeah, I have noticed that, you know, have noticed, guys, that my earlier live stream was much better. Tonight's live stream, I have no idea what's happening. I've been having a lot of sort of problems, to say the least. It's really been not performing very well. So yeah, unfortunately, I can't do much about it. It just is what it is. So hopefully things don't get any worse. Yes, the Anglosphere world is so woke. Yes, crazy. Very much so. Alex, I did my 23andMe recently. I had one macular gene, but says no increased risk likely, or should I consider certain nutrient supplements? Nope. Having a genetic predisposition doesn't actually mean that you will be susceptible to it. You've got to do things to make it susceptible. But if you improve your diet, you improve your lifestyle, you won't activate it. You'll keep it silent. And as long as it's silent, it's irrelevant. It's only when it gets activated, you know. So having the right methylation, not a problem for those genes that may be problematic. It's always new things, you know. I mean, there are certain conditions that require certain nutrients specifically, like some of the choline pathways and some of the methylation pathways. They may require specific that you really need certain nutrients. Others, there can be viruses that can activate them. There's a lot of things, so it can be a complicated. But obviously, if you maintain a good immune system with vitamin D and taurine, then you shouldn't have even the virus issue related problem for certain genes. So anyway, why do people report conflicting results with inbound or unbound to calcium? Shouldn't calcium simply be in the way for everyone? Look, it's a strange one. In the, how can I put this? Justice. A lot of these supplement makers do a lot of these studies, and sometimes they do studies in regards to their opposition. So how can I? So they may be basically bullshitting people. It's hard to say. Maybe. So you will get a lot of things that I wouldn't waste my money, basically. Honestly, I wouldn't waste my money, you know. So honestly, I think they're an expensive, I don't know what their pricing is currently. But I just have, I'll show you. I just have a simple, just standard creatine monohydrate. It's, you know, there's plenty of research on it and does just a good enough job. I'll grab mine. This is the one that I use, and it's from Gentech. Hold on. Oops. Oh, come on. Oh, I have to be further back. Nope. Nope. Too far. Too. Oh, well. It's hard when you've got a background or whatever. So, actually, I don't need the earpieces. So, I'll leave them off. So, I don't have anyone here. Yeah, look, there's so many conflicting studies when it comes to supplement makers, because a lot of the supplement makers actually do them. And there's been some people that have done independent stuff, like some universities, and pretty much they say that makes no difference, between HMB or creatine. So don't waste your money, is what I'm saying. I wouldn't. So because are you using it for, muscle breakdown and stuff like that? And when you're talking about, and also, I don't have my leucine supplement. Let me just, for leucine, because this is equivalent to leucine, but for leucine, let me just find mine. Let me just share. Oops. So if you're using it as a leucine substitute, I wouldn't waste my time. I'd get this leucine one. And if you're using it as a creatine type substitute I just go for the monohydrate that I'm doing. So that's the one I get for Dad. I did do that for a while myself. So the body ripped. So that's the one I get. So depending on, I don't know what you're using it for, because some of them they say with the calcium one, it actually helps better than it does things better than creatine. And then for the leucine side of muscle protein synthesis, some people say, they have different conflicting ideas about bound and unbound with calcium. Most people say the unbound is better and better than leucine. I've never seen any real stuff. I just think it's a load of bullshit. I think the HMB supplementation is bullshit, and I would stick to leucine and creatine monohydrate as my two options for their sort of, and that's for the the energy side of things, in assisting in strength and stuff like that. So that's where they argue that some people that HMB is better than leucine and creatine. I'm not talking about creatine loading here. I'm talking about, like muscle repair and stuff like that, and improving things like that. These people that do take HMB, they do take creatine as well, but they usually talk about something about muscle repairing and stuff like that, that it actually helps better. But I've never seen anything in the literature. And leucine actually does a much better job in muscle protein synthesis in all research. So I think it's a waste of time as a leucine substitute, and the reparative effects or the helping for muscle damage stuff that they talk about, that it's better than creatine in that regard. I think that's a load of bullshit as well. So on both fronts, I think HMB is a waste of money, personally. That's my personal opinion. And most of the companies that do the research into HMB are all the supplement makers that produce it. Nobody outside has done really independent. When any academic has done independent, and they're looking at things like, sort of retention of muscle strength and reduced breakdown of protein breakdown and stuff like that, and things of that sort, and sort of like energy sort of, creatine does a better job on that front. And on the other side, muscle breakdown and performance, leucine does a better job. And it is sort of more closely related to leucine anyway. So I can't see it's pricey, and I can't see the benefit of it at all. And there's not really, as I said, the research, this is all the people in the supplement industry that produce the product. I've never really seen any real good independent stuff. So I think it's a waste of money, pretty much. Personally, I just wouldn't waste my money on it. So I would basically use leucine, and I use that leucine, the body ripped leucine, for the muscle protein synthesis side of things. And for the other side that they talk about, where they say it's better than creatine on those aspects, I disagree. I think creatine is much better. And I think the creatine and leucine are the sort of the natural things. And I think this is a whole lot of BS supplemental stuff that does a few things similar to leucine and creatine, but it really isn't worth the money. And is it really how the body gets things? The body gets specific amino acids, essential amino acids. It gets a pool of amino acids. It gets, nutrients, taurine, creatine, all these things are in meat and stuff like that. There's no HMB in meat, in that the form that they've created in a supplement. So I'm very dubious about it in that regard. So anyway, look, there's a lot of people that will probably disagree with me. I don't care in that regard. So, people will argue all sorts of things. But I had an argument on a blog site once that I was saying that creatine loading is better for energy, stuff like that. And I had this other guy telling me that HMB improves energy far better than creatine. And it was just going back and forth, and I just gave up, honestly. And all he was doing is quoting all the industry studies that actually produce a damn supplement. And it really annoyed me anyway. So, yeah, I would give that a miss, and I would stick to leucine and creatine monohydrate that have been tested so substantially, and they are more closer to actual natural stuff that you find in food. So that's my opinion anyway. Everybody's got their opinion on that sort of stuff. Yeah. Having had a HMB, I think the last time somebody asked me about HMB was in regards to should I take HMB or leucine. It was the last one. That was ages ago, but for muscle protein synthesis. But as a general thing about the unbound and bound on calcium, yeah, I think you're wasting your money personally. But yeah. But Nathan, I take solace in Sean Baker's advice. The first step in fighting back is maintaining our health. That's true. If you're strong, you can actually deal with the difficulties of life in every respect. Hello as well, Mike Lowe. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's your brother. Okay. Gotcha. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. When we talk about deuterium in oils, is that, going back to what we were saying earlier, just a quick one. I think I'm going to bring Jonathan on, and I think I'm going to do a special with him. I'll ask him to do a special on all the supplements, and we'll go through the whole lot that bodybuilders use and stuff like that. I think that would be a really good, and what's worthwhile and what isn't. I think that would be really good to go through for people and actually just outline what we think is just genuine, which the research shows that there is a genuine reason for it, and what is just BS, in that regard. So, and we'll cover all the different aspects of all the different supplements, and because there are sort of crossovers between certain things. Yes, certain things may be closer to a specific compound, but they do have other effects which cross over other supplements, like the HMB, close to leucine, very similar. But at the same time, it is touted to have some energy-related issues similar to creatine. And it's again from these companies, and I think that's BS. I'd like to hear Jonathan's view on that, and I'd like to hear some other people's. So I think I'm going to get Jonathan back, and I'm going to do a video on the supplements of bodybuilding. I think that would be a great video to do, and covering a number of those aspects. And he can post it on his channel. I'll post it on mine, and and I think that would be a great one. So yeah, you're giving me an idea. There you go. Anyway. Back to when we talk about deuterium in oils, that's seed oils like canola, all the vegetable oils, rapeseed oil, all those. Yep. Is that the oil contain heavy water, or is it generated when DO through the? No, this is actually caused in the manufacturing process. It goes through an oil refinery. So what happens is you get the loss of certain fluids, which are much lower in deuterium. So in plants, the actual plant itself, the plant fat, that's actually lower in deuterium. So what happens is when they extract it through an extract press, they actually remove a lot of the low deuterium content in the water content. And what's left behind is the oil part. The consequence of that is that plant now has a much higher concentration, and then it goes through solvents and a whole lot of other things, and it actually concentrates even more deuterium because they use heavy water in some of the processing and all that, tap water and stuff like that. And it just, and then when they get rid of the actual fluids, they lose more 1H and they retain more of the H, or the 2H, which is deuterium, in the solution that is left over. And so processing it in this way, a number of different processes, it just increases the content of deuterium, and it can push it right up to 255 parts per million, depending on the processing. Now, some can be slightly below 200, like 180, and some can be all the way up to 255, depending on the level of processing that has actually happened to the vegetable oil. And at that rate, it's double that of sugar. And at that rate, if it gets at that concentration, your own body cannot deplete it at sufficient enough rate. There's not enough, the enzymatic pathways to remove and lower deuterium levels has a rate limiting level, a certain level. Beyond that level, once you exceed that level, the safe level is about 100. At 130. Anything at 130 or below, it's not going to cause the body can cope with that. Periodically, slightly above 130, the body can cope with small amounts. If it's basically about 30% or 40% of your diet, it can sort of cope with that. Once it gets up to, well over 50%, even at those higher amounts, like in the 140, 150 and all that, then it starts causing some problems. But even then, it's not causing massive problems, some problems to the mitochondria and impeding your energy and damaging the ATP synthase, ATPase that actually produce the energy, the ATP. So when you get to beyond the sort of 200 odd mark, forget it. Those rates and it becomes like seed oils now, like 40% of your diet for most people that are eating junk food. We're talking about massive load that cannot be. This is why people are sustaining massive mitochondrial damage, and why we will end up, if we continue on this rate, with 1 in 3 people having cancer, because they'll have so much mitochondrial damage. The body will reactivate an old ancient pathway for survival, the cells, which will upregulate oncogenes and bring back a certain fermentation, and will tell the Krebs cycle to go in reverse and drag in more deuterium, which will accelerate the damage, but also create a whole lot of lactate, which it can ferment to create energy in the primitive way that it used to do before oxygen existed on this planet. It's an old program and it works, and it just reverts back for survival purposes. The cell, we don't want the cell doing that by keeping the mitochondria happy and healthy by keeping the deuterium levels down. So no, it doesn't happen through it. It's the industrial process that actually adds the deuterium, concentrates the deuterium in the stuff. Yep. So you're sort of saying heavy water, or it doesn't generate more 2H. Because the Krebs cycle is used to basically remove it and actually put 1H. But if you to clear out, but if you don't have enough, if it's overloaded, well, I can't do it. Simple as that. So that's sort of what happens. I take vitamin D with 15 grams around noon. Okay, so you're doing the right thing. It may be a bile malabsorption then, what I said earlier. So bile may be the issue. You're not producing enough bile. So you may need to, because remember you said you've got a bit of H. pylori issue and some stuff like that you had. So you may have had problems with your stomach acidity. You may have had problems with to break it down properly. And the fats you may have had as a consequence. Usually stomach acidity issues cause gallbladder issues, dysfunctions, and that means not enough bile salts. Not enough bile, you can't absorb fats and fat-soluble vitamins. You need bile. It's not only the fat, you need bile. It needs to be emulsified, the fat, in a way where it will combine to basically do its magic. So, yeah. So you may need bile salts to deal with it, and taurine to fix up the gallbladder over time. Anyway. Oh, God. Went late to bed last night at 2 o'clock in the morning, a bit after. I'm still knackered at the moment. I'm not firing on all 4 cylinders, unfortunately. So do persevere. Yeah, so do persevere with me for the time being. Harry, I think bees are getting the sugar from the nectar rather than the... Okay. I can't remember. They probably are. They probably are the nectar. Yeah. Anyway, probably. But they do. I do remember this is a long time ago that I read the study, and they do use vibration to determine the frequency of deuterium ions. So that's how they find it out. As I said, I may just do that video, get the study and do it. Do a quick one. And there's Jonathan's site. So, and that's pinned at the top there so people can go to it. Yep. At the eczema, dryness in winter. I think I covered that earlier with the nicotinic acid or nicotinamide. Your standard B. It's part of the niacin complex. Your standard B, or eat more tuna or pig, pork to get more niacin, which will help improve hydration of the skin. Plus, make sure you get sufficient fat-soluble vitamins, which will regulate the MMPs, matrix metalloproteinase. These are collagen-degrading enzymes that are produced in the liver due to UV damage to the skin or any other damage. And what happens is it's usually a derangement. So some people require a bit more fat-soluble vitamins like retinol to regulate these enzymes properly, because they need to be prevented from over-expressing themselves in the skin and causing this sort of derangement in collagen turnover. We still don't understand a lot, but we do know that they are involved, and we do know what regulates them, the fat-soluble vitamins. And we don't see it in traditional people that got sufficient levels. So anecdotes, yes, but we don't have no research, and we can only go on that sort of stuff. What do you make of Dr. Chafee? The muscles are pretty impressive, as is the knowledge, and has been made for a long time, led to a good health. Yep, he's pretty good. He knows his stuff. He's very much like us, ancestrally focused. I've seen a couple of his videos. I agree completely that plants have got a lot of toxins in, and some of the toxins are quite severe. I remember actually he talks about, there's a couple of other researchers that I remember in the low carb community. I'm trying to remember the person now, but this guy was, this years ago, I remember seeing his video, and he was talking about something similar to what Dr. Chafee was talking about. And he was talking about some of the compounds in plants that are worse than the pesticides. So he was saying, well, you worry about pesticides, there's a lot of bullshit. Plant chemicals are much worse than even many of the pesticides. So I don't know what you worry about. If you really want to avoid that sort of stuff, just avoid completely. That sort of stuff. So yeah, but obviously I haven't seen a lot of his content. I've seen him on Bart's. I subscribe to him, but I just don't have time, like Bart, to my day job, watching a couple of things that interest me. I don't actually watch a lot of other carnivore sites. Let me put it that way. And the reason for that is because I'd be like listening to myself nearly. So, I do watch other things like geopolitical things, things about, archaeology, cosmology, physics, things like that also interest me. Stuff in my field, which is spatial science. So that's where I spend most of my time on YouTube, on those sort of channels. So I don't. I do watch the occasional here or there. Probably the only person I do watch the most is Bart. For a few laughs when he's got a few, taking down some of the, let's say, the idiots out there that come up with such nonsense. So yeah, it has. But you don't need. I would rather people get it from Piggy. In your case, obviously, religious reasons, you're not going to do that. But tuna is another great source for you. Sinclair's charlatan advocating plant-based diet, then offering us Band-Aids fixes of, yeah, pretty much. Let alone he takes contraindicated stuff, which is very unhealthy, creates a lot of deficiencies and a lot of derangements, which is metformin. Yeah, bring down the sugar, the glycating factors. It's aging your proteins and damaging them. Yeah, glycating them. Wonderful. It's important to take MK4 when supplementing with D. Over usually 10,000 or more. Yes. Below at 5,000, not really. You probably get enough minoquinone 4 from the diet if you're eating enough animal foods, especially dairy, plenty. Like in brie and stuff like that, you'll get plenty. Eggs, plenty. So, yeah. So, depends. Oops. George, your time. Okay. And that was, okay, 8:37. Obviously, it's 7:30 there for you now. Up Syndrome, how are you, mate? Is an app after lunch bad bile flow, etc. There's plenty of populations like Greeks that have been, doing naps at lunch. I do it on the weekends. I take naps. There are populations that don't really, but it seems that some people have adjusted and do quite well. It doesn't affect them in a negative way. So it's neither here or there. Before 10 days wet fast, I would lower my deuterium intake several ways and then get my hands on and stuck up glacier or similar water and pick things up with pasteurized raw milk. Yep. Yeah, I sort of try and bring, even when I'm going into a fast, I like to bring to, improve my redox potential. I like to have the electron chain work really well, the ATP work really well, so it's producing ATP really efficiently. Yeah. So when fasted, I hardly drink 1 liter a day, maybe. Yeah, even when I'm actually doing wet fast, I don't really drink much water. I will drink some in the morning. I'll have some taurine, which will help regulate electrolytes, and a bit of sodium, and I leave it at that. And I don't really worry about much hydration. Even my wet fasts are limited, So, and I actually find when I do dry fasts, but you have to be fat adapted to do that. Do not do it if you're not fat adapted. I find them, for me personally, really much easier to do, and I end up with much better energy. So I do it while I'm working. So I'm actually more productive on those days that I'm doing a dry fast than anything else. So my ketones really go high. Bad laptop. Should be spanked. Is that what you're saying? And look, yep. And that was the phenomena. It's interesting. Look, I've heard a lot of anecdotal stuff, but yeah, I definitely need to look into it. Look, I call it a dirty fast, throwing in taurine or leucine, particular leucine. Taurine also will raise insulin a bit, but it does not negatively affect AMPK, so autophagy, so to speak. And it can improve sort of the regulation of the electrolytes, especially in the summer where people may have worse problems managing that sort of stuff, if they don't want to consume a lot of water, to try and maintain their antidiuretic hormones upregulated, is what I'm trying to do. So, yeah. Well, that's my approach anyway. What's the ideal with taking touring around the 19th hour? How many hours before hitting the sack before that it usually, to saturate the whole body, it takes about 90 minutes. I usually, if I'm taking it in the evening, I take it around about the 6 o'clock, a couple of grams then. And what it does is it'll normalize any cortisol. And I wear my blue blocking glasses, unlike tonight that I actually forgot to wear them earlier. But anyway, it's a different story. And usually it will amplify, it increases melatonin, and it brings down to normal rates the actual the cortisol levels. So it actually helps with improving sleep. So I usually, 6 to 7 around there. It'll take about an hour and a half to saturate, depending on how big the body is and stuff like that. Shorter, smaller people, less time. Taller, bigger people, takes a bit longer to saturate all the tissue to get around. And then pretty much after that, 3 hours after that, you sort of start getting a more intensity in the actual. So by 10ish, by about 11, I start getting drowsy, a bit, and tired, and so yeah, and that's the time I usually go to bed. Unless on nights when I don't take any and I'm playing computer games, and like last night, and I didn't take any because I didn't want to be drowsy, and I stayed up until way past 2 o'clock. Yeah. I'm taking 5 days. I'm not at work for 5 days, so I'm enjoying myself a bit. Let's put it that way. Plus doing other things as well in between my computer games and doing some other research, plus some investment stuff as well. So yeah. Anyway, stock market, so to speak, stuff. Genetic Genie was a good resource, but still figuring it all out. Yep, Snippedia and Genetic Genie is really good. That's for the methylation and the detox stuff. Still need to do a short video for that in regards to just use more leucine. Exactly. There's a new isomer variant there, and the product there in the works. It will likely be too expensive and uneconomical to buy. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Look, I thought that leucine's much better. I made that comment ages ago to someone else, but I've also had arguments with people about with creatine that it improves energy better than creatine. So you've got those two are the arguments, that it's better than creatine in boosting energy, and the other one that it's better than leucine in basically muscle protein synthesis. And while it is similar to leucine in a sense, it's expensive. You can't justify it. I mean, leucine is much cheaper. And when I was doing leucine, I was buying from Bulk Nutrition. I was buying a much cheaper brand than even that one. Dad likes that one because he likes the taste of it. That's why I buy him that one. He doesn't like the one from Bulk Nutritions, which is a sort of pharmaceutical grade, but it's much cheaper and you get more leucine, and I just prefer that. I don't care about the taste. If it tastes, who cares? I just put it in water and just swallow it down, or in leucine, because it's like a powder. You can't. I usually put it in with the milk, stir it in, and drink it with the milk, and don't really care about it with a small amount of milk, just so I can get enough fluid to put it down, and that's it. Creatine and taurine, it's in the water, and swallow it. So I'm not fussy about the taste, but my father is, and so I had to get him that other brand. But I get the one from Bulk Nutrition in Tasmania. So that's a pharmaceutical grade, but it's just it's plain. It's like a talcum powder, that leucine that they make, the pharmaceutical grade, and my father didn't like it at all. He said, "No, take it away. I'm not having it. Get me another one." So I had to get him this one. So I usually recommend this for most people. That one that I showed before, because people that are not in the bodybuilding or not interested in that sort of side of things, the muscle protein synthesis, but want some improvements there in body composition, but don't like the taste, this one actually is more palatable for those sort of people I've found, like my father. So yeah. Anyway. Yeah, that's been my biggest thing that I've been promoting for ages on this channel, is to preserve muscles for the elderly with leucine and taurine, because taurine amplifies leucine's effect because it is a mild myostatin inhibitor, and also it's an amino transporter, so it amplifies leucine's effect in terms of muscle protein synthesis. So I think that combo is the best for elderly. In terms of muscle skeletal health. NTL, thanks Harry, glutathione on the gene and the food intake, reduced insulin spikes of environmental foreign factors, maybe at least what I can control. Yep, yeah, you've got to look into all these sort of things and play around based on what I said earlier. Yep, and come back with some feedback and see how you go. Price issue, yep, that was on the price. Okay, you guys can talk about all that. Yep. Okay. Yep, it is. Yep, that's true. Yeah, well, yeah. But it is a claim that made by the manufacturers that so there is a claim in that it actually enhances energy. So that is it. Everybody makes claims. So yeah, I had an argument with someone. So and he couldn't actually provide me any studies. So in the end, I just abandoned the whole thing because I got bored. It was like talking to a brick wall. But those are the two things that they talk about: HMB, leucine, and creatine. But as far as I'm concerned, on the energy side of things and on the muscle protein synthesis side, I think leucine and creatine are the way to go. Yeah, so that's my sort of personal. Yeah, Muscle Tech. Yeah, paid a lot for the research. Yeah, it's conflict of interest. Yeah, exactly. That's the company, Muscle Tech. Exactly. Yeah, they did a lot of the actual research and paid for it. So yeah, I think it's dubious. Yeah, look, we've got in animals, we've got leucine research across the board. Exactly, Jonathan, you're right. Across the board, we've got so much research. We know it's fundamental to protein synthesis, even in a fasted state. I did a video on leucine. If you Google my name with leucine, you'll find the video. Even in a fasted state, I call it a dirty fast, where you take in the middle of the in the sort of afternoon type thing, the time where you amplify muscle protein synthesis, when you do exercise in the afternoon and you fasted, and then you take the leucine and amplify the muscle protein synthesis effect, even though you're not taking any aminos in at all. It's still, you get muscle protein synthesis by just the turnover, autophagy, clearing out stuff out of the cells. Yeah, and so very much so. Yeah, but there's a lot of speculation on that. There's a lot of speculation. So I'm not saying that they fabricated necessarily, but they are conflicted, and it just seems that I haven't seen any independent stuff confirming any of these anti-catabolic effects and a lot of other things, and preventing protein breakdown and stuff like that. So I'm dubious on the claims that they're making. So anyway, the future will show. I did show that earlier, which was I went for the bulk nutrition. Dad doesn't like that, and this is the one that the body ripped version is the leucine that my father can tolerate, so he likes that one. But he doesn't like the bulk nutrition one. He doesn't like the really plain one, the taste, which is fair enough. I'm at the end of the day, I just want him as an old man to basically take in a bit more leucine for muscle protein synthesis. I can't do anything beyond that. So it all helps in that. Fair enough. I'm, as I said, I'm not. I will stick to taurine, creatine, and leucine. At this stage, I can't endorse HMB. We need more independent research in HMB to actually prove some of the things that they're claiming. They need to be independently proven, and until that point, some people do call it a sort of a fake leucine. But they're making a whole lot of claims which I haven't seen research to support. The company ones that do actually show that, but they're very much manufactured. So even when I heard the thing about that it improves energy better than some were claiming, like this guy was recently claiming better than. So yeah. Anyway, g'day, Lukey. We are 10 minutes away from me pulling the plug because it's bloody getting late. Dr. Biltz believes carbs is not a mitochondrial energy, but for glycan reasons in glycolysis a myth. You mean glycosylation of proteins? No, it's not. Also, he believes carbs need to be converted to fat first in the liver for us to use as energy. Let me look into this person. First of all, we don't need carbohydrate is used as energy. It is used as energy. I mean, that's false. Pyruvate goes to acetyl-CoA and then citrate. It goes into the Krebs cycle. So that's completely to say carbs is not a mitochondrial energy is completely and utterly wrong. Part of it may go off to lactate, and if you take taurine, you'll force more into pyruvate. Through pyruvate dehydrogenase. So yeah, I mean, no, it's completely doesn't make sense. And is glycolysis a myth? No, it's not. And actually, it can happen. Yeah, no, that's definitely yeah. He also believes carbs need to be converted to fat first. No, that only happens if there's excess energy from carbs and the body can't use it. Then it will convert it into triglycerides and store it away for a rainy day if there's excess energy. So yeah, the last part, yes, that's only in excess levels of energy of carbs. And glycolysis is definitely not. Where did he get his education? I wonder. It's completely, or maybe he's saying something completely different. Look, I'll look him up and find out exactly what he's saying. Maybe he didn't understand some of the stuff, maybe some of the terminology or usage. Sometimes people use words and terminology to where they confuse people. And you may have misunderstood what he was saying. I'll look into him and find out. I may even push this person, because I don't do a lot of these attack type videos. I'm more focused on finding solutions for people. So that's sort of and dealing with some of the bullshit in the sort of the generalized bullshit, but specific attacks on, crackpots that are coming up with just ridiculous things. I'll look into this, and if he's a good one for Bart to take to have a bit of fun with, I'll send it Bart's way. If it's not really Bart's cup of tea, I'll do something in regards to this person, but I have to look into him before I really know exactly what he was saying. But some of that stuff sounds very weird. Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. I will be doing something in regards to Mr. E. Pete. Harry is the anabolic effect of eggs and that of leucine the same, or combining them in synergies. All proteins have some level of anabolic effect. Okay. So, and excess energy has an anabolic effect. So all these things have an anabolic effect. If we're talking about, we have to be clear what anabolics, you can basically be growth, but growth can be a lot of things. Growth can be growth of fat cells. That's an anabolic, or growth of muscle cells. That's also anabolic. But one's protein synthesis. The other one is basically, increasing fat deposition or increasing the adipocyte. So that's a difference. So we need to be very careful how we express these things. Obviously, these are protein based, so we're talking more about muscle protein synthesis. But if you were to give somebody protein and eliminate the leucine content of that, you wouldn't get the signaling happening, and you wouldn't be able to achieve the same level of protein synthesis. So leucine is essential for protein synthesis. Let's put it that way. And, other things are important, but leucine alone, on its own, no other aminos, just leucine. Just take a supplement of leucine in a fasted state, and you will achieve protein synthesis. Because you're turning over all the old junk stuff that's coming out of the cells, and that's in the bloodstream, and that fills up an amino pool. That's what bumps you out of autophagy. When you release all these fats and proteins that are damaged out of your cells, when you undertake autophagy, autophagy does this: dip, 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 dip. It's not a continuum. It's sort of it cycles, and as this material comes in, it raises insulin slightly. It raises, those sort of anabolic pathways just a bit, and all that. It has these effects. mTOR also gets raised, and then that gets put away, all that material in the bloodstream. And then you go through another cycle of dumping out stuff into the bloodstream as you go back into an autophagic state. This cycling, it's a pulse type cycle through. Autophagy is not a continuous thing happening. So, so you can actually amplify that. You go, okay, I'm in a faster state. I'm going to do I'm doing a wet fast or a dry fast or whatever, or a semi-dry fast. And I'm going to do exercise in the afternoon. And then right after that, half an hour after that, I'm going to spike that breakdown, extra stuff that's going to end up in the bloodstream, going to shut off autophagy, and then I'm going to spike all that for muscle protein synthesis. magnify that, and I can still make good gains even in a faster state. And then that would drop off really fast. Sort of those anabolic pathways will drop that very fast because there's not enough material to stimulate and hold on to that stimulation. And so you'll maintain that. You'll also improve your sort of, because if you throw a bit of taurine in there, that's the other thing to magnify the leucine effect even more, plus to help with the regulation of the fluids inside, because it'll replete some of the taurine requirements in the kidneys and all that. And all that works really well. And so you go through a nice sort of dirty fast, as I call it, and you get really some good effects. But you have to be fat adapted to do that properly. So because even eggs have got, remember, leucine, all animal foods, meat, eggs, yeah, you name it, fish, they've all got leucine in it. It's just different amounts of leucine. So let's just okay. Oh, God, if I fall asleep, wake me up, scream at me. I won't hear you. So oops. Probably need to come out a bit. Yep, that'll do. So as you can see, just 100 grams, which is 3.53 ounces of chicken, has about 2,002 grams. Beef has far more at 100, which is 3.53 ounces, has nearly 3. So you need for protein synthesis about 2.6. So 3.5 ounces will give you enough for protein synthesis. Beef. Eggs, you need a bit more when it comes to, for pork, you need about 120 odd or something like that. Tuna, a bit less than that. There's, some of these foods, these are fortified, so just remember that. And it's not very bioavailable because there's protease inhibitors, which basically prevent the proteins from being broken down to amino acids and being absorbed. That's what a protease inhibitor is. Anyway, so they've got drugs as protease inhibitors for cancer patients, and they're contraindicated as far as I'm concerned. I've done a video on that covering that point. All they do is give people sarcopenia and make them weaker and more vulnerable to dying quicker. Anyway, even milk's a really good source of, like 100 grams, that's less than remember a cup, that's 40% of a cup of, will give you pretty good amount. So if we were to go, like a large glass of milk, which is 16-ounce milk. Oh, I've actually got it here. Sorry. There you go. So it nearly gives you about nearly 60%. Pretty good, A glass of milk, a bit of cheese, and you're pretty much done the RDI, the 2.6 grams for protein synthesis. So even a vegetarian can basically, in one meal, get enough protein synthesis. It's vegans that struggle. It's So that seeds, again, very high in protease inhibitors, so it's hard to get access to the amino acids. Like eggs, that's 2 eggs, because usually the 50 each egg is about 50 grams. Well, that's approximately a bit over, so that's 1 egg. So 5 eggs, and you've got enough for protein synthesis. I had 6 eggs earlier, and a whole lot of fish, white fish. So barramundi, actually. Had some barramundi, which was really nice. And I put a bit of, on top of the barramundi, because I really like it, I just put some butter on and it just melted. Buttery barramundi. Yummy. Anyway, I had that earlier. But, 6 eggs, I got more than 2.6, nearly 3 grams. So, yeah, there's plenty. Obviously the animal foods are the superior source and all that. That regard. Glass of milk, couple of eggs, you're pretty much done. Even on a vegetarian diet, you can get enough for protein synthesis. It's only a veganerized vegan diet you can't. So, yeah. But you can combine leucine supplementation with eggs to enhance the effect, because I know what you're getting at. I'm bloody tired. I can't think properly. So I know what you mean. Look, you're probably thinking the stuff that I said last time, that how eggs have a protein utilization of 49% compared to meat, which is 32%, and protein supplements and most other things that are 17% or less. So it's got the highest utilization of protein. So if you amplify that effect with leucine, will you get a more synergistically better anabolic effect in terms of muscle protein synthesis? More than likely, because it's got also sulfur amino acids that also play a role in that role. So yeah, more than likely. Anyway, I do apologize. My mind's not focused enough. I'm just starting to get drowsy. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there before I fall asleep, because I'm struggling at the moment. This is my second live stream and all that. What's he do? What? I'm speaking tomorrow. One comment, he drinks 9 liters of water a day. What? He's drinking 2 gallons of water a day? Really? Okay, didn't know that. Thanks for telling me. So these HMB in eggs. There you go. Thanks for letting me know. As I said, I haven't looked into it. I've only saw a couple of studies that were done by the industry making all these claims, and I said, they're all confounded. There's no independent stuff, and I didn't basically look into it any further. So you've probably looked into it far more than me. So why bother if it's in eggs? If eggs have got it. I'd just rather use leucine and creatine for both the energy and both for the protein synthesis, personally. Damn, that's a lot. Really? Shit. Doesn't he know anything about deuterium? Possibly not. Anyway, that's the problem with the medical community. They still have some interesting ideas, I'll put it that way, Stefan, about, when you talk to Laszlo Boris and people like that, he's like me, upregulated antidiuretic hormones, doesn't drink much water at all, hydrates with fat. And he's the guy out of UCLA that does all the deuterium depletion, studies, and does all the biochemistry of how it all works through fumarate hydratase within the Krebs cycle, being a critical component for water production, and also, if it's in a reverse in terms of the Krebs cycle, for driving cancers as well. So it's sort of an interesting hypothesis that he's got on that. My sort of approach is that he's missing the taurine part that is correcting some of those pathways, and ameliorating, that means reducing some of these downstream cascading effects, is this sort of thing. So yeah, so interesting, really interesting. Okay, so on that, so definitely on that front, I would be in complete disagreement with him. Completely would disagree with him on that. Says George, when I see an ancient Greek physique, I don't see concentrically oriented obliques, but rather giant spiral shock absorbers. That's what I think a slow controlled eccentric is to maximum stretch. Well, they trained differently. They trained for warfare. I tried it as a youngster. I was young as I was a teenager, trying to lift an ancient Greek shield with a friend of mine. It was quite heavy, and these guys were putting it on one hand. These guys are really strong, and so yeah, so it was. I was shocked. Yeah, but they trained slightly different than we do. They did specific training to be able to handle, to be able to hold heavy shields for defense, and also train to use weapons in a stabbing way. As you between the shield, you can actually come like that. There are a number of ways. Either that, they did change over time. They had the other one, which was the sort of rounded top, which is a bit like a hacking tool. So to come over and hack like that, and Alexander's a lot of it was actually developed in Thessaly, this technique, and it was adopted by the Macedonians later on. So yeah, but the Thessaly Greeks passed it on to the Macedonian Greeks, this technique of, so because they had a better cavalry than they had from really back. So one of the greatest cavalries, even at the time of the Trojan War, which goes way back, even earlier, were well known to have great horses that had gone to Troy. Yes, anyway, getting into all sorts of things that pretty much are irrelevant. Yep, mate, do come back in a fortnight. I will look into it. I do my live streams now every fortnight, but I will look into it. Yeah, as I said, I don't know enough about it. I've heard a lot, but there's really scant research. There's a couple of people that I do know. There's a couple of academics. I may have a conversation with them if they know any research. I'll have a chat to Bart as well, Bart K, and ask him whether he's heard anything on the grapevine in terms of research. So I'll check out with a couple of people and see what what he comes up with. So yeah, he's a complete idiot, has no idea, completely and utter idiotic. People have been taking a really high dose for a very long time, no problems whatsoever. It is absolutely proven beyond doubt with independent research and clinical studies that it has no negative effect. It's just absolute crap. there's some associational data that vegan academics have actually produced to basically make these claims, and it's associated data. It's garbage. And people like Stefano have got no friggin' idea what they're talking about. So anyway, I think Bart's going to do a video shortly on him. So pull him apart, and because he makes a lot of claims and a lot of things that are completely idiotic. Anyway, I'm going to get to bed before I start falling asleep. Anyway, thanks, guys, for being here. Appreciate it. And thank you for the love. And I am getting out of here. Thanks, Sammy. I will pass on your regards. Yeah, he's getting better. His swelling has come down his leg. And it seems like the clots are starting to clear out of his, so it's good. He's improving. So, and I've sorted out with his doctor if he gets COVID again, basically just the antivirals, nothing else. No more jabs. He's done for. So just the antivirals. So that's the focus now. So hopefully he recovers soon. G'day, Alex. Where have you been hiding? And you're late. Or you'll probably hear quiet. Yeah, it is. It is. It's been very stressful for me. I felt like I aged a couple of years in the last couple of weeks because I was worried so much for him, and then putting on a brave face so he wouldn't sort of worry, so he would be focused on healing rather than let me worry about him, sort of thing. So yeah, he's doing better now, which has sort of taken a lot of anxiety away from me about his situation. Anyway, listening. Anyway, I'm going to go and get some sleep. Okay. See you guys. Thanks for being here.